Building and Grounds Committee to order. What I will do is I will turn it over to Mr. Link. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Fedorcha. So tonight we're going to lead with two facilities, kind of capital project type presentations. The first one will be considering primarily solar, a solar option for the main campus here, solar energy option. But we're also going to receive a quick update on our measurement and verifications from the ESCO project that we did a few years ago, and just to kind of make sure that we're hitting our targets there. And then we're going to go into a very quick update on the kitchen project at the middle school, and then we're going to talk about solar. This evening, we have Mark Gallick and Shane Holman, both from McClure Company, to kind of give us a short presentation and answer any questions. Gentlemen?
So thank you. I am not Alyssa, who you might know from previous meetings, just in case you were.
Thank you.
Thank you. The hair kind of separates us so people notice the difference. This is the presentation we're going to go over.
Thank you.
So as Matt said, we're going to talk a little bit about the M&V, or measurement and verification, that we've done on some of the previous projects here, as well as talk about how we're making out on the kitchen, and then move into some options around solar energy that the environment currently is pretty good for, especially around some of the public institutions like school districts. So if you can advance your slide there, please. So just to kind of rehash what we've done here so far, we've done 3 projects with the school district. The first one was in 2018. All told, in all 3 projects, the total cost to the district was right around $13.2 million. And we are guaranteeing a savings on the backside of those of 19.2. So you invested $13 million, and essentially what we're saying is that you're going to save over the 20-year life of the program just north of $16 million. So for us to make these claims and to do work under the Guaranteed Energy Services Act, we are then required to come in and actually measure and verify those savings that we guarantee. So what we're going to see in the coming slides is actually phases 1 and 2, because those are some of the older projects. So, yep, go ahead, you're good, you can advance. And the way we do that is with different protocols that we use for measuring and verifying energy savings in projects. They're industrial standards that we use to do this, and they're widely accepted. Advance one more, please. So the good news is, we guaranteed about $134,000 in savings in year 1 of the projects. We actually measured and verified almost $160,000 in savings that first year. So what that does is it actually gives you an excess savings of just north of $20,000. On the right-hand side, the top right-hand side of that slide, we actually broke it down by the different, what we call energy conservation measures, or individual line items in those contracts. And you can see which items overperformed. We had one that didn't quite make it, and that was the building control system. That is largely due to the lack of runtime on the HVAC system, and that's correlated with COVID. Because the buildings were shut down, you didn't have the HVAC running as much, so the savings weren't there. But the aggregate of all of those different ECMs actually drives the savings that we guaranteed on the project. Like I said, about a $21,000 positive energy savings for all of those projects. Any questions on the measurement and verification? Okay.
So that's 2 years ago. Is that right, or is that last year?
This would be 2020 through May 2021.
Oh, I'm sorry, it says it right there.
Yep.
Okay. All right, very good.
Yeah.
How do you determine the savings? What drives that percentage? What are you looking at when you actually say that, for instance, the district-wide lighting upgrade was 100% compared to guaranteed? What numbers are you quoting for that?
So that's based on a post-measurement of the lighting. So in lighting, each one's a little bit different, but lighting in particular, what we do is we do pre and post measurements of the lighting. We look at the electric usage.
Got it.
Pre-post.
Thank you.
And calculate it that way.
So the McClure Company actually has access to our PPL portal, so they can
Okay.
kind of track it in real time.
Got it, thank you.
How do you do it for the roof? How do you do it for the roof?
The roof is tied to your fuels, so it's directly tied to heating. It's the increased insulation in the roof membrane that we generate savings from.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. Anything else? Okay. So we'll move on and talk a little bit about the kitchen upgrades. So that project was about $687,000. Currently on the construction of the project, we're about 55% complete. When we break that down into the major HVAC equipment, we're at about a 70% installation on the HVAC systems, and we are anticipating a substantial completion of that project in August 19th of this year. So that project is proceeding. We had a little discussion before we started the meeting. Everything is proceeding as planned and on schedule.
So early this afternoon, Mr. Hauser, Mr. Stroll, and I did a walkthrough, and it's actually even further along than what you see here. They have the kitchen equipment that we decided to keep and reuse. That's actually reinstalled and already wired back in. The walls are painted, and well, you actually can see it there. They have the fill back in, the floor fill back in where the serving lines are going to be going. So they are moving right along.
So that's the update on the project. Any question on the kitchen project? No? Okay. The next thing we were here to discuss was solar and options for public institutions like school districts when it comes to solar PV or electric solar. So the way that solar works with public institutions, currently in the market, there's a lot of incentives around doing solar and renewable energies, tax credits largely. The problem with public institutions like schools is you don't have tax liability. But private institutions like McClure Company obviously has a pretty large tax liability that we're able to leverage to help on these projects. So the way these projects work is you partner with a company like McClure and you do what's called a power purchase agreement. And we leverage those different tax incentives to buy down the cost of the project. So that includes the investment tax credit, federal and state depreciation, which you aren't able to use. There's also some Act 129 rebates, and there's also a PPL grant currently for solar in the market. So the conditions for these types of projects are really good, even though school districts, without those tax incentives, it wouldn't be quite as good for school districts. When you couple those with the solar, it really becomes a good opportunity for schools. The way our projects work, or the way our PPAs or power purchase agreements work, there are no upfront capital, which means we do these with no cost to the district. You just essentially realize the savings, and we'll show you what that looks like here in a second, because we've done some quick proof of concept calculations for the district. So if you could advance to the next slide. We looked at potential locations for a solar field that would essentially provide 100% of your electric for this section or this campus of your school. It would be a 1.8 megawatt field. So just to orient you, should I have this right? This is the building we are currently in. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, up there. This is the building we're currently in. Here's your sports fields and the high school. So we're actually talking about the wooded area behind the high school. That can move. This is proof of concept. We essentially took an educated guess of where the best location of this field would be. Made sure you had room to offset the electric usage that you have for these buildings. And we actually created a 30-year agreement based on that size of field and the electric consumption that your buildings have. Financially, over a 30-year PPA, you have the opportunity.
I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Oh, you're fine, you're fine.
Chair's telling you something.
They're literally 3 days old. I'm sorry, Mark.
No, it's okay. Based on our preliminary analysis, however, the solar field, you have the opportunity to save about $2.5 million over the life of the PPA, which currently, the way we have it drawn up, is a 30-year agreement. Advance on that one more time. This is the solar performance that we put together. I'll kind of walk through the columns. Column 1 is the year count for the agreement. Column 2 is the generation that solar field would provide to the school district. Column 3 is your existing or your current electric spend for electric. And column 4 is kind of the important one. That's what we're saying you would essentially pay for that solar field over time. So you would remove column 3 and you would start paying column 4. The difference between those are your annual savings. So if you take column 3, subtract off column 4, you get column 5, which is your annual savings for this type of agreement. There's a couple benefits to this in that you have a fixed fee in your budget, right? So currently you budget your electrical costs, but it fluctuates every year. With this type of arrangement, it is fixed in. And when we have this fully designed and vetted out, you know exactly what you're gonna pay year 1 is what you're gonna pay year 20 and what you're gonna pay year 30. The life of these systems, they're warranted for a 30-year life for the panels. It isn't unexpected to see those panels last 40 years. The one piece that does have a shorter life is the inverter. So these solar panels actually make a DC voltage. Buildings can't use the DC voltage, so you use these inverters that convert that DC voltage to AC that's able to feed your buildings. Those last 15 to 20 years on average. So built into this PPA as well is the cost to actually replace those inverters. So these are maintenance-free, other than some knocking down some grass that might be around the solar panels, for 30 years. And as I said, at the bottom of column 6, you have the potential to generate about $2.5 million worth of savings at no cost, because there is no upfront capital under these projects.
Couple questions that
Sure.
I actually thought of today,
Yep,
this morning.
absolutely.
If that is ultimately, if we move forward with the project,
Yes.
and that's the site
Mhm.
where it would go, is part of this fencing around that as well?
Yes, yeah, so, yeah.
That's part of the,
Mhm.
okay.
Typically just a chain link fence
Yeah.
for security. There's a few switchgear pieces that you don't want anybody to get.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, would there be like an access road cut in down by our old tennis courts, or would you come in down from like Welchtown Road, or, so like, how does that work?
That's some of the finite details we don't have completely vetted out, but there would be access to the solar field, yes, to be able to maintain it. We would have to maintain any issues that might come up. Again, you'd have to knock down any grass that might grow up in around the panels.
Yep.
But yeah, you would have access to the field.
Okay. All right, we were just hoping that the access point would be from our property and not the public road.
And that can be, absolutely.
It's probably gonna be easiest from your property, so we don't have to go through
Yeah.
township zoning and ordinances to access a public road.
Okay.
It's usually the easiest.
I agree.
Yeah.
Is there insurance that's required on the district side for vandalism, weather? I mean, we have weird stuff happen around here, you know, tornadoes and stuff.
So a lot of it has to do with your insurance carrier provider, so there can be riders on top of each other. Each situation has been different, we just have to work through it, but typically it's not a deal breaker by any means, it's to figure out who wants to be on the top of which provider.
And when you said it's gonna power, which buildings is it gonna?
This campus, it'll offset 100% of this.
Is he talking high school and middle
All
school?
the buildings and the Fieldhouse Stadium?
Yes.
So the entire campus?
High school, middle school, this?
Yep.
So everything but Peters Elementary School?
Including when the sports complex lights go on.
Yes. As he looks to the experts.
Yes.
I just
It
know that
offsets it, it offsets it.
Yeah, the cost for starting those up and doing all that fun stuff is sometimes.
A better way to think about it is anything within 2 miles where the crow flies of the array, any meter, I should say, can be connected. It's connected virtually, so it's not hard. It's only hardwired in one building. We're gonna find the closest meter, and you can virtual meter to all your locations. So when the stadium lights come on at night, obviously it's not gonna be powered from that, but it builds up the power during the day and will actually spin the meter backwards, which gets
Credited.
accounted for with your other facilities at the end of the month.
Answer my second question, thank you.
The other question I had was, we started the night talking about the measured savings on district-wide lighting, for example, and you were at 108%. I don't know what the dollar and cent figure was. So I would assume that that is going to be reduced then, because we're not using that electric anymore. So that would mean a drop in the first part of the presentation, overall savings. Or is that calculated in here? Can't you
So,
understand my question?
well, so the guarantee on the original projects are actually a KW savings, it's not a dollar savings. So, and it's pre and post, the lights would still use that electric, it would just come from the solar field instead of from PPL.
But we won't be using near as much, hopefully, I assume we will use near as much.
Yeah, you'll
Or
be
are
drawing
you just
less.
measuring the kilowatts
Mhm.
and not the cost of the kilowatts, so, okay, all right, I can buy that.
How large is the field?
Physically? 28 megawatt.
You're probably 5 acres
Yeah.
total.
I mean,
Due
it's-
to clearing the fence.
Okay, so like I see the track, so I'm just trying to make a comparison of how large it's going to be.
Right.
Stephen, can you go back to the slide with the maps, thanks? I guess another question, that we have Ernie in the audience, sorry to put you on the spot. But so next, we're considering an overhaul of our softball, baseball complex. And you know where our retention pond is out there? We're not anticipating having to expand that or anything if we were to move forward.
Potentially just a little bit, because we'll be over that 1 acre threshold for NPDS. However, since we're not actually adding new impervious cover, we'll only be doing a small portion for water quality management based upon the area disturbance.
Okay, so
So,
that,
so what they're showing there definitely doesn't get into our little basin,
okay.
which is still an embarrassment for me from 2009, so.
So that's good news, and then I guess we would just have to, whatever the timing looks out, make sure that we're not, if both projects were to move forward, that we're not in each other's way.
Yeah.
I see no issues on our end.
Awesome. One additional item on a lot of the grants that are, or the tax incentives, they actually decrease after 2020, this current year. So next year, this year it's 26% tax credit, next year it drops off to 22%, the year after that drops to 10. You don't have to have it constructed by the end of this year. It needs to be under agreement, so you have to have an agreement for this type of arrangement going into the new year to satisfy the tax incentives.
So explain to me how you're gonna take over the portion of what we would be paying. You said you would save money with your taxes?
Yeah, so we actually own the solar asset
Okay.
until the end of the PPA agreement. So it is owned by us, and we essentially become your utility. So rather than you paying PPL for your electric, you would actually pay us, which funds the balance of the cost of the solar field at a reduced rate.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Does the solar field have to be placed on land?
It doesn't. Typically roof space, there's not enough roof space to offset that much electric is usually the way it happens. It's a simpler installation on the ground, so the problem you run into when you put them on, I'm assuming you're talking about roofs.
It just, only because of the land around, there's not a lot sometimes, and
Yeah.
not that I'm a tree lover, but I'm sure there's others that might be, so we just wanna make sure we're getting all the
Sure.
points here.
What happens when you need a roof is you actually have to take that equipment off the roof, replace the roof, and then put it back on. So it's not, certainly not a deal breaker, but it's just another level of things that have to be considered. And we can certainly take a look at the roof mount, but typically there's not enough square footage on your roofs to, because we're talking about 5 acres of land.
I was just thinking safety and
Yeah.
the possibility of vandalism and things like that, when it's obviously higher up too. It's a lot more difficult to get on the roof than it is to
It is, yeah.
scale a fence.
Yeah, like Mark said, it's more of a accessibility as far as space available. You get into your roofing warranty a little bit, they're typically okay with it. I know we did the roofs here a couple of years ago, so you're good that way. Then you have to do a full structural analysis to make sure it can support it, because they don't really drive them into the roof, secure them in the roof. They're weighted down with basically patio blocks.
Yep.
So they put a lot of weight on the roof. The land is usually just the easiest, even from a maintenance perspective.
Is it gonna be easy for your guys to cut grass there?
No, I would think so, just from what I've seen.
Okay, well,
Others.
I'm just asking because
Yeah.
you're the one who's gonna have to deal with it.
So the ground covers typically, it can be a couple of different things, but usually it's a low maintenance grass. It's a slow growing grass. it doesn't really have to be addressed until it starts to approach the actual panels themselves. As long as it's not blocking the panels work.
So if a panel does fail, it would be our responsibility to replace that?
No, it's
It would be
ours.
us.
Okay.
So, just to go into the mechanism a little bit more, in order for us to use our tax equity to put in a project like this for the IRS, we have to own the system for at least 5 years. Meaning, you can't pay for it, you can't maintain the functionality of it, you can maintain the grounds, but we have to own every aspect of it, because it's really not a way to finance an asset. It's our asset for 5 years. In this case, if you go for 30 years, it's our asset for 30 years.
Gotcha.
There's just little nuances like that we have to be the facility operator.
And that's not gonna change over the length of the project?
No. No, and there's other options. Most schools don't want to entertain them, but after 5 years, you can actually buy the system at fair market value, which is the linear depreciation from today's value. But then the question that becomes, what do you do with the SRECs, which are the renewable energy credits, which you sell on the market, maintenance, and some other things that go along with it. So this is anywhere from 20 to 30-year PPA has been the most popular.
So we wouldn't pay anything, but we'd save money
Over the course of 30 years.
over the course of 30 years.
Correct.
Yeah.
I guess what I was gonna say, and I'm speaking as a board member now, like, this sounds too good to be true.
Yeah, that's where I was
That's what I've
coming
been
from.
thinking all the time.
That's what I've
And
been
your
thinking
first
too.
project you came, I thought you were totally full of you-know-what, and you know what, you guys came through. So what I'm saying is, based on their track record, I'm willing to move ahead on this, because they really came through on the first part, and I'm hoping that you're just as good on this one, and so I'm willing to say, if there's a chart in here, what we're gonna be doing when, but, you know, I'm willing to move forward at this point, personally.
So if we choose to do that, because it's not a dollar value to the district, does that mean it doesn't have to go out to anybody else to be reviewed, or does it?
I believe because it's also considered energy savings, that we do not have to go out, just like when we did the ESCO project. Is
That was just my.
Yeah.
accurate statement?
Well, that's part of the
It's a
key,
service.
Yeah.
Unless somebody else is gonna give us money.
Yeah.
You know, then we can talk.
Stephen, can you just flip to the next slide though, please? So that's one of your more recent projects there?
It is, so that was Field and High Spire. So this is a school district right outside of Harrisburg. The area that you see where the solar panels currently are is actually a landfill. So that was unusable space, and they couldn't do anything with it. So we installed that solar field on top of that landfill. That landfill offsets 100% of the electric use in the district. So they get all of their energy or all of their electric off of that field. And they actually saw us, they're going to see over 20 years, almost $3 million.
How big is that field?
I think that one's only like 3 acres.
No, it's more than that. I think it's like 6 or 7.
Oh,
So
yes.
in totality, with the fence and everything. So the other one that we show, Mifflin County, just to put it in perspective, that's 30 acres. That was on a, I call it a mountainside, hillside, the incline is about 28%. We logged the whole thing. Very challenging site. It looks really flat there. But it was quite the undertaking, but that's about a 6 megawatt system. 5 megawatts, the other is our megawatt in our site.
That is the largest K-12, Pennsylvania K-12 solar array that's been done.
So is there any way you can sell money to PP&L, or we wouldn't be in that part of it?
Not currently, you can't sell the electric back to the grid. You can only credit it to your, that's how the night lights, and things like that work. the street lights.
I'll throw a little caveat in there though. There's something going through legislation right now called community solar, which gets rid of that 2-mile limitation. So when that passes, if you wanted to, you could expand your field to take up whatever space is left, put your electric out in the market and actually sell it to whoever wants to offtake. So you can't do that now until that passes, and it's been bounced back and forth between Senate and House for 3 years, but
Have you done
what's
any
gonna
work out at Peters, our other building? Or is that too small, or it doesn't work, or are you taking a look at that at all?
I think we did, but I don't know the answer to why we didn't take a look at it. And sometimes we just take a first pass, because a part of our due diligence period, if we go forward, is to, take a look at this field in real detail, and then see if there's other sites that you want to consider for their buildings.
Mr. Green, do you mean to put a solar field out at Peters as well?
Possibly, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, if it works here, why can't it work out there, I guess? If everything we're hearing here is true, then it should
Well,
be
maybe
true
it's
out
the
there
state.
just as well, so.
If that legislation would pass, that would, because Peters is outside the 2 mile radius from here, if that legislation passes, we could kind of fund Peters Energy through this field though, right?
Yep, you just have to add on to it.
Expand it
Power
some.
Yeah.
So we might still be able to do it all in one location, although we may lose the
Tax
the
credit,
return,
yeah,
the return on the
LTC
tax
starts to go
credit,
down.
yeah. We can
Whatever,
look at
I
it.
don't know what the possibilities are, that's what I'm asking.
So you bring up a good point, so what if we had to add to it? What does that do to it? Does that create a new proposal? Does that change what we're doing? Say 5 years from now, we say, we put a new building in, it's 4 stories high because we brought Peters over here. I don't know, thinking big. And we now need more.
Right.
What do you do?
So that PPA would remain as is, and then we could look at that as separate, or negotiate a way to combine them. Just have to deal with that when the time comes, but, you know, it can be amended at any time.
have you seen excuse my naivety of this, where I was principal before, we had a solar field on our roof at Nazareth, so I know the whole process. As the solar panels become more technology positive and create maybe more energy, would that benefit us in any way? Do the panels change? Over 30 years is a long time
Yeah.
when you're talking technology. So what if the panels improve and we can increase our energy production? Or are we just stuck with those panels?
I would compare it to lighting. So it wasn't long ago, everybody had T12s.
Right?
We went to T8 28 watt, T8 25 watt. LED was too expensive until 7 years ago. Now it's straight LED, no problem. They're very inexpensive. The panel technology where it's at, the efficiency's pretty good, but the costs continue to really come down on the
Okay.
manufacturing side. So 10 years from now, they might get double the capacity out of the same square footage of a panel. I don't know. So you kind of have to weigh it when you get to that point.
Okay.
The bulk of the cost too is the racking, everything that sits
Mhm.
on, and they're very simple. The panels are 4 by whatever. They have a whip on the back that you unplug, a couple screws that come off. So if they come down that change them out, it's not that big of a. It's not like starting over. Right.
Okay. That would be our cost then, to do that.
It would have to be a mutual choice to
Okay.
do it. Yeah.
All right. Just wondering.
And obviously you wouldn't want to do it unless it made financial sense.
Right.
So it seems like if the committee supports it, I believe we would have to enter into a letter of agreement, a letter of intent.
Right.
So maybe you want to describe that a little bit?
So the letter of intent is just an agreement between the school district and the McClure companies expressing interest that you want to pursue this project. What we've shown you is really proof of concept. There's a whole lot more work that needs to be done to this. But that essentially says that you're working with us to evaluate the potential of doing a solar field for the school district. And it's largely that's it. Is there anything else that I missed?
That's it. It's non-binding. We just ask for 90 days for due diligence. There's 2 major pinch points that we have to look at. The first one is permitting and ordinances to make sure there's nothing in the local ordinances that permits you from putting in this array. There's some water where we have it, so if the array goes exactly where we put it, what's shown on that map, that would be pretty rare. It's probably going to move around a little bit. The other one is the interconnection with PPL. They have their own permitting process, which could take a while. Just depends what office you're working with.
And we've done things, we did a solar field at Elizabeth County School District, which is right in the flight path of HIA. So we had to do FAA glare studies for approaching aircraft. We had to do glare studies for Route 283 because it ran right along the field. So there's things like that we find and work through as well.
Sleepington
I
Airport
was
will
just gonna
fall
say,
into
we-
that, would
we
they?
have-
I think you're good
We're
here,
good
but
there.
Yeah, I
No,
did.
Okay.
it's an example of
Are
things
we
you might
going
not.
to log, are we gonna log the trees that we would cut down then?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah.
Is this Washington Township or rural, do you know?
I believe that's.
Washington.
Is that Coastal Sleepington? I thought, because that's on this side of,
Welshtown.
it's on this side of Welshtown and this side of the ski club road.
Oh, so it's-
So isn't that still Sleepington?
I would think so.
Slayton?
I would think so, yes.
So we have enough land for that back there?
You do. Yeah, that's the other, we did look up your tax maps and saw the outline of your properties.
Yeah, that if you have to move them around, there's still enough
Yeah,
Yes.
back there.
yeah, we just tried to pick the most isolated area that's away from any homes, the fields or whatever, so, but it'll probably have to be adjusted slightly.
Would that interfere with the ski club at all?
No, because they're on the other side of the stadium.
Okay.
So, I guess I'm asking if the committee, the board members on the committee support the letter of intent being on Monday night's agenda for consideration.
So is there enough time, I know you had said about the tax credit, the 26% by the end of the year. What has to occur, if we choose to move forward, what has to be occurred, what do we have to do before then? Because I'm sure a letter of intent doesn't seal us into the 26% tax credit, just thinking.
It doesn't, so we would have to do all of the engineering. It's similar to the energy service project we did here, so we'd have to do the final engineering, come up with what the final project looks like, obviously have some meetings to make sure that we're doing it the way that the district wants to do it, and then we provide you with a proposal of what this really looks like, hard numbers. When you sign that agreement, as long as that agreement's in place before the 2023, then you're good with the 26%.
And no permits have to be prepared prior to that.
They don't have to be prepared, but we would work through and make sure that there's not going to be any on the back.
Okay.
So as long as we get this done by the end of the year, we would be good.
Yeah, you should have time to do that.
That's a lot of work for you guys.
That's what they do.
I know, but it's like, oh.
So potentially break
September, October.
ground late spring, early summer.
Yeah, well, it depends on PPL and they design their own switch gear, which can take a while. In order to safe harbor the 26%, we need to be 5% invested, which is essentially what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
For the due diligence period. And
It
even
sounds
if it did go to
good.
22%, again, it's not a deal breaker, but why not harness it as long as you can.
So I'm not hearing any objections to a letter of intent? Okay.
Saving money.
We'll put that on the agenda for Monday evening then.
Okay.
Sounds better than the guy my husband
Thank you
had
both.
for my
Thank you.
house.
both very
Thank you.
much.
Yeah, the way we lose
I have a
it.
couple extra copies on your line.
You may just want to put them on the table here then.
First step somewhere, so see ya.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And no cost up front.
Do you need an NPDS permit to do that?
Yes.
So if we can only have, if you open up one permit and you have two projects going on simultaneously, we would have to include your project or our project in the same permit, correct?
I don't really answer that question.
I believe it's correct, because
Okay.
you cannot, and I think Greg, like, remember when we started the field project, this one was still open, so we don't have any open permits on this campus at all anymore, right? We're all copacetic, we're closed down, we're good.
Yes.
So I do think if we had two projects, like if I submitted in November and then you submitted in January, and mine wasn't through the process yet, then they would have put a stop on mine and say, whoa, you got another 5 acres of disturbance now that you gotta account for. So potentially, and I'm just bringing it up because I don't see it as a major issue, but it's a timing thing. That almost timing wise on that, it would be better if the board elects to go forward with the baseball and softball project, that we get that in, we get that largely through the process. They can just come in and do a modification of that. It would depend a lot on how those two schedules coalesce. I think our project's a lot simpler to pull off, that we'd be ready to submit the permits by the end of December or January, depending on when the board makes a decision. I don't know when you guys will be ready to submit for a permit, but I wouldn't want you submitting for a permit until the end of April.
Yeah. Well, we can coordinate.
Or, yeah, I mean, if the board approves both, then it's just a reality we're gonna have to face. My thing, we'll get into a little bit of schedule as part of my presentation, is right now I have plenty of time, because since it's a natural grass project, I really don't wanna seed and sod till fall. So if this was a synthetic turf or other project, we'd be pushing hard to hit the summer construction season. I'm trying to hit more of fall of next year. So it may work out schedule-wise, because I have some wiggle room in my schedule. Just.
No, thank you
Yeah,
for
that's a good
bringing
point.
that up.
Alright.
But I'm sure we can.
I guess we'll be
map it all
talking,
out.
we'll be
Yeah.
talking down the road.
Yeah. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
both. Safe drive back. Okay, up next, we're actually gonna go right into another, presentation. This evening, we have Ernie, I'm sorry, your last- Graham.
Yes.
This evening, we have, Ernie Graham with us, and he's gonna give us, a little more insight to the project we'd be considering for the softball, baseball complex. So that being said, I will turn it over to you, and you can just cue Steve when you want him to advance the slide.
Sure, and I didn't bring any hard copies of handouts. Is there anything?
I will get it in the notes for them when
Okay.
they get the minutes. And
Is it okay, I mean, if somebody wants to lead through something, I have the renderings and I have a copy of the overall estimate. Does anybody want a hard copy of anything?
Good, thank you, though.
I say don't get it to.
Yep, all right, very good. All right, Maestro, appreciate the opportunity to be here. I always feel these presentations are kind of like Shark Tank kind of thing. So I'm looking for not one investor, but 5 in this case. So I don't know, Brian, if you have any preamble, but I'll just kind of start a little preamble for you, and if you want to jump in. You know, we are the firm, we did your stadium project, we did the field, the track, and a bunch of other things, which feels like a million years ago at this point. I think, Brian, at some point around 2018, I guess you've had issues with baseball and softball for some periods of time, not only the field conditions, but basically you do a great stadium renovation project, and then you kind of look at equity of facilities and be like, huh, maybe things aren't quite the par here with all our sports teams. But I think Brian first approached me like in 2018 and said, hey, could you take a quick look at this? So I think after taking a quick look almost every year since 2018, this year became a little more intense. So it became a little more intense look. So we took it a little further. I believe Brian's had some dialogue with the board. I don't think this is the first time you're seeing or hearing any of this. So without anything further, this is obviously what you have. If you could slide to the next slide, please. All right, very good. So this is just an overlay of basically, you know, what you have that, you know, if you're to proceed with this project and you're to basically look at renovating the existing softball field, that's the footprint, the way it would kind of set up. Baseball field largely stays in the same way down there next to the existing detention basin. And we basically put this image in here to show that, yeah, at the end of the day, you still have your 2 other practice fields there. They're not part of the project being renovated, but you still have the capability to use those. So as an overview on this project, we'll start with the softball field since it's a little simpler. New fencing, infield renovation, warning track, batting tunnel, bullpen. That will be on a synthetic turf carpet system. Player shelters, not to be confused with dugouts. It's a roof shelter with a chain link fence enclosure on a concrete pad. A really high-end tension net backstop, 25 feet high, but it's the tension net type of system, not chain link. Backstop wall kind of gives it that professional look with wall padding on it. And then in behind the backstop there, you see a prefabricated building which would occupy storage. And when we go through the process, we really can't say concessions because, like I said, it's going to be a prefab building. We're looking for you guys to sell prepackaged goods and those kind of things out there. Add a grill, knock yourself out, that kind of thing. But I don't want to have to try to do a code through a concession building, or that'll totally kill our budget. Baseball field, from anecdotal stories of Brian telling me and just things with drainage and other issues associated with that field, the baseball field is an entire redo. Strip the sod surface out, regraded, change the soil horizon, add in $140,000 with the under drain, completely rebuild the infield, laser grade the whole thing. New chain link fence all the way around, a 20-foot high, called a green monster or Navy monster, bulldog monster out there in left field. Complete perimeter fencing. You see the bullpen and the baseball dedicated batting tunnel down there next to the basin. Same thing, backstop treatment that the softball field's getting with new player shelters, 30-foot high tension net system, and a backstop wall. What you don't see on here, obviously, because this is, I think the McClure guy said proof of concept. So being a proof of concept thing, we still have a lot of design and engineering to do, but we've gone to a lot of effort, and we're gonna go over a summary cost estimate here, but my actual cost estimate is 6 pages long with all the items and things that go into this, with the under drain and other things. So one of the other issues that I believe you have with the drainage conditions, especially down on the baseball field, is the runoff that wants to come from the upper parking areas and the paved surfaces, run across that grass surface, which is graded very, very flat, coupled with probably poor soils. It just ponds out there in the outfield. So we have about 900 feet of perimeter piping and an inlet system to capture some of that water and start diverting it around those athletic facility surfaces. You can go to the next slide. So this is just kind of an image. It's almost too far away for me to read. So this would be the backstop, kind of the view in from that's like deep shortstop out there of what it looks like looking back towards home plate. So you can see what we're referencing in player shelters, and as we go through this, there's multiple vendor choices that we can go to. So that's kind of a placeholder. A shelter like that maybe costs somewhere around $30,000 to $40,000 versus $100,000 or more for a dugout. So it'd be an enclosure surrounded by chain link on a concrete pad, the backstop wall system with padding, and however you wanted to letter it or whatever. My graphics guy put a logo in behind home plate, which I don't recommend, but you know, obviously you can do something on the wings. So that'd be kind of how the backstop area looks on baseball. Go to the next one.
Ernie, does that netting, we can lower and raise that? Is that what that is?
You
or?
can, but on a tension net system, since it's not like ball barrier net where it's made to go up and down a lot, a tension net system, like anytime you see in a major league or minor league or higher level collegiate ballpark, it's actually held by tension.
Okay.
So you can lower, and it's relatively easy to replace, but it's tension. So it's not as easy just dropping it down and not clipping it.
Okay. Thank you.
And you get it, like when you're watching big, like a ball that hits the backstop, you don't want to get caught up in the net and be tangled in there. So
Right.
it has some rebound to it.
Gotcha.
So that's a 4-season net that's
Oh, yeah.
not supposed to come down.
Yeah, that would just be up
That's
year round,
probably
but to
really what I'm
protect,
asking.
but to protect the net, what the vendor that we use on this, Sportsfield Specialties, at the top of the poles, there's these things called hurricane clips, so they're wind rated, because eventually, sooner or later, the net will tear, the rope will tear if it gets under too much wind stress. Those hurricane clips are designed, if you get too much snow load, like freezing rain and ice and a big wind, the clip will snap so that the net doesn't tear. So, you have some maintenance on next spring to go put the net back up, but at least you didn't destroy a $10,000 net.
Right.
And I believe, yes, so that's the other view on baseball backstop area, looking down the first baseline. If you want to flip to the next one. And that would be the softball field infield. There again, you see the same kind of treatment with the player shelters, obviously a little more compacted, softball being a smaller field. We're not really changing the dimensions too much on softball. If we can buy a little bit more room behind home plate and kind of push the backstop back a little bit to increase the playing area back there behind the catcher and the umpire, you know, try to look at that. And you kind of see our vision for, like I said, prefabricated building. We'd obviously have to have some discussions with Brian and Greg and the board on, you know, we have a budget for them as to what those actually become, but our thought was that it would have a small portion dedicated with a sliding glass window or something similar so that you could actually have your booster group in there trying to make a little bit of revenue, and then the other half of it would have an overhead door with some storage space in it. Next one. That would be looking at the same kind of building structure we showed behind the softball backstop. You can see the softball one way out there in the distance. This would be right off of that parking area where your buses kind of are over here by the stadium. Same kind of thing here. We kind of incorporate that into the walkway that would go down to the baseball field. You can kind of see the concept is you have a garage door, a small area dedicated to concessions. We wouldn't label as concessions. You can do that in the future, and then once the building inspector leaves, well, you can do whatever you want. But, and I'm not promoting that as an avenue, by the way, but just because it says concessions, like I said, we're trying to get you a building that you can multi-use out without spending $500,000. Next one. So to get to where we did with an estimate, we had some topo for this area, largely around the detention basin area, because we did that a couple years ago. The rest of this is all LiDAR mapping, so Don't think that this is real topo, but it's accurate enough for us to do some takeoffs. But just wanted to show you that, you know, the way we go through this process to be able to arrive at numbers is we just don't napkin sketch this and take a guess at it. We go through a fully detailed layout design. There's some things maybe you'll want to change here in the future, but there again, this is kind of like a proof of concept meeting. I love that term. I'm going to use it for the next month. So this helps us get all our takeoffs. You can kind of see the configuration. So we kind of changed the dynamic a little bit on the baseball field. Brian had some specifics on, you know, as far as the other fields around it as to how we had to configure things or how our configuration ended up, just to make sure that we didn't end up occupying this entire space with baseball and softball and not being able to accommodate some other sports for practice. So next one. And that's just it in color for those who don't like black and white. Next one. So here we get into the meat of the matter, and like I said, I have 6 pages of spreadsheet that go into all the detailed numbers, which I put on our FTP site that Brian, our superintendent, can share with you guys if you really want to get into the weeds on this. But like I said, for a high-level view kind of thing, just wanted to start out with kind of basically, like I said, it's Shark Tank, so I just want to see if there's any investors at maybe what we're looking to offer here. One of the things he started with back in June, I started with a couple rounds with Brian on some scopes of work. He gave me some feedback, talked to his coaches, did X, Y, Z, made some changes, did whatever. So when we were back in June, and there again, those numbers actually started being generated in April. So you guys have kind of known what happened after April with fuel and supply chain and other craziness. So my numbers that I used originally in April were based upon the most current bids and unit price data that I had coming in from bids at that time. So as Brian and I worked through this in April and May and finally produced the process in June 10th, things were already in motion as far as the economy goes. So we were basically, for baseball, for like total improvement costs in June of about $885,000. Add in professional services, contingency, bonds, permit fees, you know, those other soft costs that you always have. We were predicting baseball to be somewhere around just over $1 million. Softball, like I said, a little less scope. We're not doing as major as in deep renovation on that, just a lot of upgrades and things around the perimeter. Softball was coming in, total project price of about $440,000, and we had allocated about $225,000 for the structures that we spoke about. So the total price tag in June was around $1.7 million. Moving forward to last Friday when I compiled the final numbers, as part of compiling these numbers for this board presentation, I got a little help from my friends over at Hummer Sports Turf, who are one of the premier natural grass field builders in Pennsylvania. So they gave me a little feedback on the numbers. So their numbers coupled with where we are economically wise, plus with the unpredictability of moving into a construction season next year. So we're basically pricing 6 to 7 months ahead. The numbers went up, I think they calculated at around 14%. So baseball, we're looking at just around 1.3. Softball around 473,000. The structures we kept the same because we're carrying that in there as an allowance for an overall project budget of about $1.9 million. So moving forward, I think, not to speak out of turn or anything, but I think if we're looking at this from a 10,000 foot global level kind of thing moving forward, I think we're real comfortable, even given the unpredictability of the economy, of delivering a project for around $2 million, including $100,000 in contingency. So basically, what we're looking for is, probably a construction budget of 1.9 and an overall project budget of $2 million.
Thank you, Ernie. So it's clear that the cost, everything, materials to equipment to labor to even just getting stuff here has gone up drastically, and we're seeing that everywhere. We know that when we took out the, when we redid our bonds, that we worked in the additional $2 million. If we're going to do a project, it would go to this, which means then that we need to continue to look for savings, especially with, I know Mr. Dice and I continue to work with St. Luke's for their sponsorship to see what kind of return that we can get over the length of the bond there to use to put towards this project to hopefully realize more savings than, because we still need to consider those other two projects being a maintenance building and the retractable wall out at Peters Elementary School. So numbers have changed. This is most recent, most accurate here in front of you. So open it up for conversation. We also have one of our varsity coaches here tonight. Mrs. Farber is here, our softball varsity coach, who may be able to speak a little bit more directly to the condition of the fields now and her input on this. So we'll open up the discussion.
How much extra did we get from federal or state? State, I'm sorry, state. Isn't that what it's,
You mean the through the state's budget?
yeah.
Give me 1 second here. We actually have that on the finance committee.
I figured you did. I don't use a lot of that for security.
While you're looking that up, just, so it looks like most of the added costs between the two is really not structure-based, it's more grading and demolition and
Well, the biggest cost,
contractor-based, not product-based.
no, because there's not a lot of products in here. I mean, there's just not, but it's really the uncertainty, but everything in construction runs on diesel. I mean, so, and it's the cost of transportation of the aggregate, the cost of the excavation, the cost of the stone that goes under the field, the cost of the delivery of all the infill mix. So there's just a lot of that going on. And like I said, moving through this, I feel really comfortable with the $2 million budget, because the thing is, I'm asking for a contractor to kind of validate my numbers at the end of July, in the middle of a construction season, that if we were doing this in October or November, when we would be pricing this again, I think we'll see a different scenario unless the trajectory of the economy that we're on right now gets worse.
So what kind of contract would that read? That if we aren't gonna, you mentioned that you might not be looking for the fall of next year. I mean, we're already going up 14% from what we've already approved.
Right.
Or suggested.
Right.
Now if we go and say, okay, yeah, we'll give you a 1.9, and you're telling us a $2 million budget, come October of next year, you all of a sudden say, oh, it's another 15%, well, then we're out. And you know, what kind of contract does that look like?
Well, and I understand, well, I'm hoping that we can approach this like we did the stadium and track as a design build. So in the schedule, what we would do is, once we got through the 30% portion of this project and we did the survey, we understood the soils a little bit better, and we understood the stormwater management a little bit better, we would actually solicit for and get those prices fixed, and I would say by Thanksgiving, or between Thanksgiving and Christmas. A couple reasons. One, the contractors are out of construction season. I think we're gonna see a change in the next 4 months. I don't think there's gonna be as much unpredictability in the marketplace, especially in construction. The other thing is putting a project out in November or December to guarantee a contractor work for next year is highly attractive. So I think you'll see more aggressive pricing than going to a guy in the middle of July who is already up to here trying to get projects done that isn't needing a project at the moment. And don't forget, we have a $100,000 contingency built in there, and there's enough flexibility in some of our scope of improvements. Let's say on the backstop wall systems, instead of doing a concrete backstop wall, we can always take that and just run the tension net pole system to the ground, put posts on the railings on those actual posts, and put the pads on the posts, and save ourselves $40,000 per field that way. So I think we have enough flexibility within the scope of work, plus getting a bid out early, and maybe the market stabilizing a little bit over the next 4 months. I feel very comfortable with $2 million. I've been doing this for 3 decades, and this has been the toughest year to predict stuff.
You're talking to a person who
Don't get
buys
me
it,
wrong,
too, so-
I think this is a project that the district needs to do because of the fields in and of itself and the look of them and
Safety.
the safety of them and everything. So I'm all for it, don't get me wrong. But I'm more concerned now on a business side and a contract side of, I'll be honest, coming in and looking at 14% when we just had it quoted last year, working in that industry, that's absurd.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean to say it like that, and that's pretty much out there, and knowing that that's not gonna happen, and there's the possibility of it increasing again, I'm struggling with saying, okay, and I'm the first person to say that that's the area that needs to get done next for our students.
Well, I guess if I could, since you're the first shark that responded. So,
Ernie, if I may just quickly answer the other question
Okay.
that was asked. So through our basic education funding subsidy, that's an additional $589,792. Through our special education funding subsidy, that is an additional $117,464. So we're looking at a little over $700,000 additional dollars into the budget. That's not counting the additional $240,000 that has to be dedicated for safety, security, and mental health, which also was released to districts, we have 29 days to write that application.
So that could go for Officer Jones.
Yes.
Are you able to share any insight at all about the contract with St. Luke's and how much they would be willing to contribute, or is that off the record?
At this point, I had, within the last 10 minutes, I received communication from the St. Luke's director. Without reading his text, he was dealing with some personal issues and some other things. So we are in current negotiations with our health network partner, and without getting into the weeds too much, I just say that we would like to extend our partnership with our current medical partner, and they are going to do everything they can do on their end to help us on our end, especially with a project like this.
So Shark Tank.
Okay, yeah, back to the chart. So, if you look at it this way, and I get it, and I'm doing a lot of presentations these days, and there's just a lot of uncertainty in school districts. I mean, just all over the place with lots of questions. To get to November, to say where we could actually get and solicit to go get like an actual contract from a contractor with some guarantees and things in there. Now, I think unless things really change in the next 4 months, getting a contractor to firm price everything, there's gonna be some caveats in there. There's gonna be like a fuel surcharge clause and a few other things. So, but to get to that point, you need to do a topographic survey. That information is always good. So if you invest the 15 grand in to get the topographic survey done, great, it's good. You can, if you do this 5 years from now, that's an investment made that you always have. Same thing with the soils test. Our total fee for this project is $71,000. So that includes the design, the construction, the permits, the construction admin, all those kind of things. So if the board was to have a discussion on this and say, how far do we need to go before we can be 95% sure of what our cost structure looks like in negotiating a contract? That number's like $30,000. And of that, 20,000 of it is good for life, unless somebody goes, the soil changes or something, which isn't gonna happen, or the topography changes, which is gonna take an earthquake or a flood. So that's really where your initial investment is up front to get this to November. So I don't think we're necessarily asking you to say, hey, we're ready to spend $2 million tonight. But I think the question more is, are you willing to spend now $30,000 to get us to the next step, that if you need that additional security, which certainly in this economy, the way numbers fluctuate, is certainly not a bad idea. Especially with the McClure guys coming in here and talking about this other project, as you heard me say in the schedules up there, we have time, because I'm not looking necessarily at the summer construction season of next year, because I don't want to try to grow grass during the summer. So we're really looking at a year from now. So we have some time to make these decisions. But to get us a little bit further down the road, we need to spend probably at least $30,000.
Would that allow, if it's approved and it's a fall start, would the turf be ready to play on by the next season?
The softball field will definitely be ready. The baseball field's only going to depend on the growing and throwing period.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to sod the infield, we're going to sod the infield transition, but to keep this under budget, we couldn't afford to sod the entire outfit.
Sure.
So the fact is, though, that if we're going to do this project with McClure, we both need topo. He needs topo down on the hill. We need topo up on our side. So I think when you're bored, when you have this decision on Monday, if you're definitely feeling like you want to do the energy project, which it sounds, that's a very positive thing. That's almost a no-brainer. Too good to be true, right? So, those kind of things. We might as well throw in the 5 acres we need to do the baseball softball complex. And when you're doing that, there's going to be an economy of scale in that survey too. So Recommendation wise, if you're uncomfortable with where the number is and the potential cost fluctuation as you move forward, let's at least get the tools and the information we need to at least make better decisions, say come around that Thanksgiving period.
I don't know if it helps, but my 2 cents on the thing as the coach is that this is beautiful, and there isn't anything in there that's not needed. I don't know if that helps. Like, he's done a fantastic job, Mr. Geis and everyone who contributed to give what it needs for the improvements. And like, if you're looking for an example, someone might look at that picture and say, well, why do they need turf for the batting cage or the mound? It rains once over there, that area's not usable. We can't pitch, I'm up to my knees in mud. So those are necessities, and he made it work. I think it's beautiful, and I will just say that there isn't anything in there that I think is over the top or fancy, or, I'd be the first to tell you, like, well, maybe we could cut a corner here, or maybe that's not really necessary. But, there's places that we play that are over the top, and there's a lot of things that are not necessary. This is, like, he's done a fantastic job at making it 1,000% improved and efficient for what Northern Lehigh needs, to have a beautiful complex, but also to fulfill all their needs safely and effectively.
I agree on the safety side. Just, there's the drainage of the baseball field and things like that in general are not in a shape that our boys should be playing on, and the fencing and that on the softball field that's rusty and dangerous, and the dugouts with the bees and all of that stuff, when we come up to the games, it's not really presentable. So I'm the first one to say it's something that's needed. It's probably the only area of our athletics that isn't looking professional and really up to the quality and standards that Northern Lehigh is trying to present.
I'm gonna take it from an educational point of view, being an ex-phys ed teacher. I really would like to address the other fields as well. We're just
Yeah.
talking about baseball and softball,
That's
but
right,
we've got
yeah.
these 2 practice fields that I'm sure phys ed is going to be using. Believe me, I taught on those things, and it's horrible. It was horrible
You're right.
back then, and that's 1980s, 90s, and 2000. So, I don't have an issue of taking 30,000 and let's go forward and see where we're at. But I'm at the point where if we're going to look at a global situation, not just athletics, we got to look at how does it benefit us educationally as well. So,
I agree.
And I'm hoping St. Luke's comes up with some bucks, my little background from the healthcare. Little insight. I know John Graham very well, who's in charge of the St. Luke's. And they're all about how they can help the community, especially John. St. Luke's has that more invested, frankly, than I believe our other healthcare network does, and I think they'll work with us. I really do.
Look, if I could say, John was very, he was happy to see that this was a natural grass project for lifelong learning.
Yeah.
He was excited about that, and the big move in a lot of other school districts, and we've done it too with the turf.
Mhm.
And for that, it was the perfect fit.
Yeah, but
Perfect fit.
not for this.
But lifelong learning, John definitely appreciates that they were looking for more natural grass projects.
And like I said, I think they'll come through fairly well for us. I can't guarantee anything, but I can.
All I can say is Brian and I, and honestly Brian, but we can always consult first, has been, I'm gonna use the word relentless. With, really trying to get them to go all in to help us.
Yeah, and I'm saying go for it, because I think you're gonna get the return. I really do.
I do have a question though. Now, on Mr. Kern's point of the rest of the fields, those aren't really being touched. Is that correct?
That's
with
what
this
I heard.
estimate?
No.
So
I mean,
then,
aside from the perimeter drainage going up around the football practice field, no, there's no.
because you got your booster club, kids are playing on that at nighttime. We got our soccer teams are practicing on that. Our football team practices on that field. I know we have the turf field too, but, I don't know.
Those are nice things to bring our community up here, even the NLYA soccer program. I mean, they play over at Eagles Nest and that's fantastic, but having those kids play here at the high school sometimes with the rest of the NLYA teams are,
I mean, I understand the cost goes up, there's
Yeah.
no question about it. But I think it's worth taking a look at personally, that's how I feel. So.
Where you do that with the field.
If I had a crystal ball to say with the money that we have already in our bond, which also included $2 million for some project, whether it be this or something. And if that isn't enough, where is the money going to come for that? And what is the budget? And I'm not asking you to give me an answer because I know you can't. When we come down next year and put out to the public that we're raising our taxes 5 mils because we're doing this, what are we gonna answer? I mean, I'm not prepared to answer that.
I mean, there's an,
I
You know,
just,
and-
I
and
just
I-
not.
and I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, as a district, we have to provide areas for our community and our students to be able to not only learn educationally, but be social.
Well,
And
I
I
would
think-
understand that. I mean, we took, we take criticism every year for our budgets, and now we're actually possibly creating, because we don't even know what educationally our budget's gonna be next year. We may need 2 or 3 mils just for education because of cost of everything going up. I mean, that's realism here. I mean, I just don't know.
We didn't take a lot of that into account when we just voted our budget either. So we made some choices. That's what happens every year. We make a choice. We make it for the immediate and not sometimes for what a couple years down the road looks like. Not disagreeing. I don't think 5% is anything there, but you know, when we're looking at what it is and we're trying to service our students and allow them opportunities, I think part of our responsibility is to look at it as a whole, and I think that's our job, and I think we all have to look at that personally. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, education isn't just in the classroom either.
That's right.
It's outside too, so.
We just had a culture survey done, and we are asking to figure out ways to provide and grow our culture, and part of that is through social interaction, if it's through sports or some other type of program, if it's clubs or whatever it is. Our job is to make sure that we can fund those and provide them and allow our community to help our students be successful.
I agree with what you're saying, Gail, and I hear what you're saying, Gary, and I get both sides of the coin here, and they're 2 difficult questions, and you could bounce this ping pong ball all night and not come up with an answer. I think it's a project that's necessary. I'm shocked at the 14% increase. However, when I go past the gas station or go buy a hamburger or whatever, you know, I just got my bank statement today, and my interest rates went up by 0.75%. You know, so in a way, I guess I'm not shocked, and I'm not expecting that number to decrease significantly, regardless of whatever happens in the market. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at a little bit of a gamble, and we're looking at gambling $30,000 on the project as I see it, 20 of which will probably be available even if we don't do it for future projects. So we're gambling 10 grand here is what it comes down to. And I guess I'm willing to gamble 10 grand to see where it goes. And I'm not saying I'm gonna vote yes on this project, especially if the cost keeps going up, but at least now I'm willing to spend that 10,000, I'm gonna put 10,000 on red and see what happens, see where the wheel spins, you know, and go from there. So that's where I'm at, but I don't know where your consensus is, Gary.
I don't know. I'm
I
not,
would- I
I'm not
would
one
vote-
who usually argues with my side that I'm coming off of. I do know right now that it's becoming a severe issue. I mean, look at, you know, what we were going through with the public in this past year. I mean, I'm very nervous, Matt. I'm really concerned about you know. And, you know, I don't know. I don't want to throw that other thing out, you know, I'm a senior citizen on a fixed income. But technically I am, and also I also look at my savings, which is not that much. and knowing how much I already lost this year because of the way the economy is going.
You know, let's not
I
talk
mean,
about that.
even, I have a life insurance that was paid up and I was growing interest on my life insurance, and I lost $14,000. I didn't know how I could lose $14,000 on life insurance. So, I mean, with those in mind, I have to think about where we are in the future, and I don't disagree with you, Gail. I think, you know, we need the facility for the safety and for everything else. And as far as what we're doing, because I know we put a lot of money in the football field because we want it to be, you know, the top of the line kind of thing. We didn't want it to look like, you know, the Hicks of Slatington, but,
But it's also for a safety reason, too.
right.
There's safety reasons, there's educational reasons, there's
Yeah,
social
there's
reasons,
everything.
it's more than baseball
Absolutely.
or softball, no pun intended, don't get me
Yeah,
wrong,
right.
that we're looking at here. You know,
I
there's a lot of issues, and I would just say again, I'm willing to invest 10 grand in it. I don't know if anybody else supports that, or I see Bob shaking.
Going
yes,
back to
you know.
what you said, Matt, and that's kind of where I'm at, is the fact that if, you know, we're going up much higher than I even anticipated today, carrying it. And tomorrow could be another 10% and
Oh,
whatever else.
absolutely.
If it goes that way, I cannot support this. I cannot do that.
I'm not
So I
expecting to
don't
see a
know.
lot smaller number. to
I
be
don't know
honest.
Yeah,
what, I don't know where I would stand today totally with that in mind.
I agree with you, and that's why I am, let's see what outside dollars we can get. I'm really hopeful that's something.
Well, I mean, that's always nice, but, you know, again, it's the same well we keep going for.
But it's for this, but it's for this type of a project, and that's exactly what they are there for, you know? Like you said, it's not artificial turf. Okay, guess what? You're not gonna have some of the issues that you have.
I mean, no pun intended, St. Luke's is here, our kids are gonna get hurt on these fields, so. I mean, there is a.
That's perverted.
I mean, seriously, there is a safety issue when it rains here. I mean, I played a short time ago.
Let's check the record.
And there was water issues at that time.
Okay.
And you don't want your softball outfielders
Pumping the
ducking
water.
because they're getting told that a fly ball is coming over from the baseball field. How many times did that happen?
Happens all the time.
Or vice versa, you know?
Is
But
that gonna happen with the layout he has here?
there's a fence there, which in theory yes, somebody's gonna clear the fence. It's inevitable, let's be honest.
I kind of
What
hope
it,
so.
me too, right? But what it helps alleviate
Yeah.
is the crossing of athletes in the outfield, of collisions, of anything of that sort that, you know, is long overdue, and just the safety-wise has to come to mind. And I agree, I'll be honest, thank you for bringing it up. I didn't even think about the educational side with our gym. Thank you.
If the committee tonight supports moving forward with kind of that next exploratory step, you know, that $30,000, let's find out if it's truly feasible, could we work into that for that same cost, a second look at the two practice fields?
I think as we move along, I mean, once you do that and we get some survey data and things like that, I think we're at the point that we've kind of been kicking this can along. We need to get a little better data and things moving forward. And like I said, I do strongly recommend, like, that when you have this discussion on Monday, considering the amount of acres the board needs and we need, that doing that from a survey perspective, doing two separate surveys makes 0 sense whatsoever. So you might as well just survey everything all together. And so then honestly, like I said, as we continue working through this process, then actually making the NPDS and the engineering and stuff coalesce, it makes 100% sense to even include the baseball and softball in that NPDS permit boundary, even if maybe you don't end up doing that. And then, while you guys were talking, I actually had a chance to think here for a second. So, when you talk a little bit about product, that this was largely a labor and equipment driven project, not so much material. I was figuring how much chain link fence is involved in this job. And until you start talking about fencing again, the biggest cost of increase in this industry, the sports industry, is fence, steel and aluminum. Short in supply, prices change every 10 days. So as we move through this process, you know, if the board says, hey, let's spend 30 grand, let's move this down the road, I think there's a way, because this is all about playability of the fields, right? The other stuff is really, really nice, but, you know, maybe that market changes down the road, but I think, you know, as we work forward on this, maybe we can get the baseball field drainage fixed. Maybe that's the next step in this, instead of, you know, $250,000 in perimeter fence and backstops. So, as I said, I'm just encouraging maybe to take the next step, and then we can work with you through the process to get us into a budget that you guys feel comfortable with. But fencing is a huge cost, and there's probably $300,000 worth of fence on this job.
So then I guess I'm gonna pose a
I
question.
think you have support to put it on the agenda at least and go from there. You know, maybe the other people will be against it on Monday, but.
Ernie, what is that, what is the label of that process?
I would call it a due diligence investigation. That's probably how I'd send like when you guys, if you vote on Monday and the board authorizes the administration to seek a proposal, I would call it a due diligence investigation. You can even loop it in a little bit with the McClure stuff, because we'll work with them to get the survey work and other kind of things done, so. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for all your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Coming out.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Gurr to continue with the agenda.
So the next agenda item, updates from this summer. I'm gonna say, luckily, we did not have any huge projects going on, and, you know, rooms we need to put back together right before school starts. The middle school project is moving along. I visit with them probably at least once or twice a week, and I'm in touch with them that everything seems to be going really well down there. So this summer, we were able to mulch the Slayton playground, get the mulch back to where it was at the beginning, well, in 2010, 2011, when we renovated Slayton. Mulch is back to the top of the curb. And that's something that we've had a hard time accomplishing, just because it's hard to get equipment across the mulch and the frequent rain we've had in the past summers. This year, unfortunately, we've had a drought, so to speak, and we were able to get back there, and it's completely safe and back where we wanted it. So that was a huge project that I really wanted to see us accomplish. We power washed the softball dugouts, and we had some extra white paint here, so we did put a coat of white paint on them again, just to pretty them up. And I knew we were coming into this project, and we didn't want to spend a lot of money, but we had some paint, and we had our summer crew roll some paint on there, so they look 100% better than they did. The middle school art room, they needed a new sink, so it took a while to get one, but we actually have it in the warehouse now, and we're gonna get that installed before school starts. The softball scoreboard, that arrived midsummer. That was installed and it's up and running. We wanna do a little further testing on it, but it is ready to go. The tech department is installing, I'm gonna say 15 or 16 new projectors in the high school.
She's stepping on your toes.
Yeah,
So,
it's seven in the high school. We did
7.
more last year, yeah, 7 in the high school.
that's right, because we did some.
Yeah.
So we're only assisting Mr. Hill with the installation of the mount. I don't want to take credit for anything else. We're putting the mounts up for him, and his team finishes the job. The summer staff we had this year have done a great job. Weed whacking, push mowing, mulching. Rainy days, they move furniture. They've helped the custodians in the buildings whenever they needed anything. We actually had one summer helper who was here at Slayton for quite a while and was a huge help. Like I said, they've done almost all of the outside work that you see here, the mulching, the weed whacking, landscaping. The only thing they didn't do was the mowing, the majority of the large mowing. So it was great having them. They were a great bunch of students to work with this summer. So all of our buildings are on track. We're actually ahead of schedule in most of the buildings, largely due to having the summer helpers. And also, I think the last couple of summers, we've had a challenge with filling positions over the summer. This year, we were nearly fully staffed in my department anyway for custodians, so that's helped out tremendously. So we've had a great summer, and looking forward to this coming school year. You're gonna see on the agenda, we did hire a new middle school custodian, and that'll be on the board agenda. And we also hired a recent, I think 2015 graduate from Northern Lehigh as another maintenance guy for our department. So I think he's gonna do a great job. He's very excited. I met with him today when he was in doing his employment paperwork. So he's excited to get here, and we're excited to have him. So that pretty much concludes that portion of the agenda. Any questions on anything for this summer?
How's the stadium as far as the turf and everything goes? Is that good?
It's good. I just had the field turf team in. They have a crew that goes around. They'll make repairs on some of the embroidered sections, like the hash marks or the logo. Sometimes they let loose. The crew was here. They went over the entire field and fixed everything. They had they'd seen nothing wrong with the field, and it's actually wearing very well. We do have it, I'm gonna say, maintenanced by Field Turf, where they come in and they actually remove all the rubber over the entire field. They run it through a magnet, pick up, you won't believe the stuff they find, bobby pins, coins.
Well, that's why I asked, because I know that
earrings,
rubber and stuff
all
comes
kinds
up
of
and
stuff,
everything.
so
That's why I was asking.
It's all sifted and cleaned and put back into the proper height in between the fibers, so.
Cool, thank you. I was just
So it
curious
is
how that was, I
really
mean,
wearing
if
very
we're
well.
talking about all this other stuff, let's find out how our other investment was doing. with
Any
it.
other questions about summer projects, things for the summer? Okay.
I'm glad it worked.
Should anyone have any questions, please just reach out to me. The next item is pretty much an update. The Santa Clara Vanguard Band will be here this weekend. We've hosted them probably 2 or 3 years in the past. With COVID, they did not come. This year they are coming again. They will arrive, it's late Wednesday night. Mr. Carroll and his band booster team, and he has some teachers who have volunteered and some custodians to help be here over the weekend with this group. And Carroll does a great job with organizing and planning it, so it pretty much runs very smoothly. I have maintenance guys on standby. Mr. Carroll has my cell phone number, but they will be here arriving late Wednesday night, and they will be leaving Saturday afternoon, evening, sometime around then.
Is that open to the public?
So I
That
was
was
just,
gonna be my
so traditionally, yes. This weekend, Mr. Carroll did receive notification from their director that because COVID cases are creeping back up again, they are not letting spectators in, because if they lose any of their performers, they can't compete down at J. Bernie Crum, which is like,
Whole
it's
reason they're
like the
here.
last playoff before they go to nationals. That's a sports term, I don't know what they really call it. So they are locking their people down, that the only people that they can intermingle with are people within their own group. I understand that. I understand why. I would hate to see them not have their people in place to be able to compete. So I quickly called Mr. Geis this morning and then went back to Mr. Carroll, and we are going to live stream it through Pixelot, so anybody can log in from anywhere
Oh, okay.
and see it and hear it through the live stream. And also, the Santa Clara Vanguard leadership team came back and said, we get it, it's a disappointment. So they're giving us $3,000 worth of tickets to go to the competition at J. Bernie Crum, which is cover the cost of every single one of our band members and their parents to be able to get into the competition for free. So it's disappointing that we just can't open the gates like we have a couple of years ago, but I kind of get it as far as their own health and safety. And I think their give back, in addition to what they traditionally given us, is, I think that's reasonable. I think it's very reasonable.
I think the band folks will be thrilled to, and you said the parents can go too.
They're actually giving us
That's-
enough tickets that
That's a big thing.
both, two adults can go with them, whomever that may be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
was disappointed, but yeah.
so once we know when they're actually doing their full rehearsals, we'll push out to the community that here's the link, you can log in to watch them live. Okay.
And knowing from the past, I mean, they were very, very
Responsible.
careful about what they did here. I mean, they really, watched very carefully, and I think they were, there's no real problem with them.
Yeah, we've
Being here
never
at
had,
all.
we've never had any problems.
I mean, when they pulled out, I don't think we even noticed they left.
Exactly. That's true.
Cement pad?
So the last item on there, we had out for public bid the cement pad for the 10 Outback of Sleepington. We did not receive any bids. So I rebid the project, and I do have interest from a local contractor. So I'm hopeful that he will come and look at the project. But more on that, next Buildings and Grounds meeting. That concludes my agenda. Again, if anyone ever has any questions, please just reach out to me or Mr. Link.
Where is that bid being posted for bid for the cement?
It's
Like,
in,
if somebody wanted to go,
it's in
bid
the
on it.
Times News. It's posted in legal ads in the Times News.
so they don't have to have like, wasn't there, what is that other one that we have to bid through? Was it Stars, Co-Stars? So it's not through that, so it could be, they don't need anything special to bid for that project.
A local contractor can
Do it.
Greg,
bid the project.
if that doesn't work out, I spoke to, he's the head salesman for Blue Rock. I golf with him all the time. His name's Jay Robinson. He said, because I saw that on our agenda and I happened to be playing golf with him, and I said, hey, can you help us out here? He said, if you give him a call, he'll give you a list of vendors that you can reach out to.
Okay.
All right? And I think if we use their concrete, we might be able to get a better price too. So I'm trying to work my angles. No, my golf game doesn't help, but
If he has some contractors that, I would take the list now.
yeah, he said just give him a buzz. I could give you his number and
You give me his number, I'll call him
Okay.
and we'll get some.
I'll make sure he
Just
gets
at
before I
least,
leave.
I can, cold call these people and say, hey, I got a project and.
Yeah,
you're
I'm just
working
saying
on
if this, whoever is bidding it doesn't work out, it might be worth a shot to try that. So I just reached out to him and
All right, thank you.
you got it.
Thank you.
Could you refresh my memory of the size of that pad that you're looking for?
Um,
Like I remember it wasn't little.
It's 1,750 square feet of concrete. I think it's like 32 by 55 or something like that.
I was
It's
just
a-
curious.
It's a little bit larger than the 20 by 40 tent.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank
Is
you.
that it?
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, let's talk about laptop and Chromebook insurance. In the past, before last year, we used to charge insurance for Chromebook and laptop, for damage. Parents had the option to buy insurance. Last year, we did, if you remember, we agreed to do a waiver where parents didn't pay for insurance. We wanted to see how it went for a year. So what we did last year was we had no insurance, they didn't have to pay anything. Students were forgiven for one accidental incident of damage with their device. If they had multiple incidents of damage, then we charged for whatever the cost of the damage was. We also charged for any lost device or a device that wasn't returned when a student left. That typically now is the model that most districts in our area are using. Most districts at this point did away with the insurance, and that's the model that they're using. We were also advised a few years ago that legally, what schools used to do is they used to charge insurance in order for the student to take the device home, but legally, they said due to equity reasons, we're not allowed to do that anymore. So anyway, now that we did the insurance waiver last year, I thought it was a good idea to revisit this. I would like to go forward and just do away with our insurance option and just kind of keep what we had last year. Keep it that if a student damages a device, if it's accidental, we'll forgive them, for the first incident of damage, but anything after that, I think it's fair at that point that we charge, the families for whatever the damage is. So what I'm looking for is any comments, or is everybody
You
okay
think it
with
went very well as far as that goes, and minimal cost to us?
Yeah, it didn't cost us a lot last year, and the reason being is, actually a lot of our Chromebooks is where most of the damage was. We can replace the Chromebooks with the old LCDs. We actually have hundreds of them now that we pulled out of old Chromebooks that still go into the new Chromebooks. So most of the times when Chromebooks are damaged, we don't, it's just our time to fix it for the most part. We did have some, the high school laptops, we did have to purchase some LCDs. I believe last year out of my budget I spent $30-some hundred for repairs for LCDs. But I also want to make a point too, we still have over $75,000 in our repair budget, because when we sell our old devices for recycling, we receive some money back the last so many years, so that helps. So we actually still have a healthy repair fund right now. I didn't even dip into that. The money that I used, I have a little bit set aside in my budget each year for repairs, so I use that money. So I didn't even dip into that $75,000 that we had sitting there as well. So that's money that's still sitting there as well, so, yep.
Do you have any kids that really abused it?
We did have a few, yes, and we do address that with the principals. I see a smile from one of the principals, not gonna say names, but yeah, we do have a few students that were a little hard on the equipment, and sometimes what we'll do in those cases is we do work with the principal and the families to say, hey, maybe your student can keep it in school a little bit, until they work on some etiquette and things like that. So yeah, we work with the families and the students when that happens.
And not having insurance, a lot of paperwork that we don't have.
Yeah, it cuts down, it was really honestly, it was a paperwork nightmare for the offices, because we had to collect the forms from everybody, keep track of the checks, and we have to keep spreadsheets and database, on who paid for what, and it's a lot of administrative overhead when you do that, a lot more than I think we realized, when we first started doing it, so it really cuts down on a lot of that.
That's fine.
So, is the committee okay then with going forward? We will do away with the insurance from here on out? Okay. And it's something that, again, if it becomes a problem 2-3 years down the road, we can revisit it. It's always something we can revisit down the road. Okay, great. So I'll move on to my next item, summer updates. Greg already helped me out here a little bit, but I'll go over this a little quickly. Over the summer, every year we re-image high school laptops. That, for the most part, is already done. We are still in the process of working on the Chromebooks. We get all the Chromebooks back, we check them in, and then what we do is we physically clean the Chromebooks, give it a quick cleaning, and then we also wipe the Chromebooks too. When I say wipe, we actually give it like a reset so that it deletes the data and go through that. So we're still in the process of doing that, but we are on schedule to have all that work done for the start of the year. We are almost finished with Peters. We have a good part of it done. We're actually working on Slatington Elementary and middle school. We also have a lot done, and we still have to get the new Chromebooks out, but we should not have any trouble with getting all that done. I shouldn't say we shouldn't have trouble. We will not have trouble getting that done for the start of the year. We'll have all the Chromebooks distributed and ready to go for the start of the year. So that's the high school laptops and Chromebooks. Next thing is the high school. We did install 7 projectors that Greg's crew helped us out with. These are projectors that we had left over from last year that we ordered new last year. And what we're doing there is replacing the oldest Dell 560Ts, which are also used up here at Slatington. So we're actually removing those. We're keeping those as spares for the Slatington building. and given the rest of the high school new ones. Last year we replaced 20 some at the high school, so this is in addition to that. So we have the high school nearly complete. There's still a handful more that need to be replaced, but we'll keep revisiting that year to year. We'll try to get a few more there. This year we did order 20 plus projectors for the middle school. We ordered those back in March. They're still on back order. They will likely not come in until early fall, probably September, October. Again, we ordered those early and they're still on back order. We're still having trouble with electronic equipment, getting it in on time. Just about everything we order is delayed. So we are holding off on that, and we should have those in and we should have those installed over the holiday break. That's what we did with the high school last year too. We ran into the same situation with the high school last year. Stephen Haas and Kyle Kramer came in over the holiday break, over the winter break, and they installed projectors. So it looks like we're gonna do the same thing this year. So we'll do like a day or two over the holiday break, over the winter break, and get those installed. So that's the laptops, Chromebooks, projectors. The next thing is we did our Power School rollover last week. It was last Monday, July 25th. And that kind of sets the stage now where now transportation can start doing their scheduling their buses for the next year, scheduling your classes, things like that all starts to happen. So the Power School roll is important because now we can move on with the next phase. So that was done last week. And the last thing we're working on, we're doing some platform integration changes. Some of the companies changed the way that we pull data from Power School, things like that. This happens from time to time. Canvas was one of them, which is a big platform this year. So we installed the proper plugins into Power School for that. McGraw-Hill Wonders, which is used at Peters and Slatington. They now have the option that we can connect to our Clever so that we can automatically roster students. So basically it saves teachers a lot of time where they don't have to go in there and do that every time you get a new student. So it does that automatically. We're in the process of setting that up. Same thing for Renaissance, which is Star Reading Accelerated Reader. That's used at middle school and Slatington, although I think middle school may not be using that this year, but still Slatington uses it. So we are doing the same thing there, where it'll do auto rostering, save the teachers the headache of setting up classes and things like that. That wasn't available with those two platforms prior to this. And USA Test Prep is also changing. They're changing the way it works. That we had auto rostering set up before, but they're changing the way that's done. So we're going to have all those platform changes, and those will all be done in the next week or so. So that'll be done before school starts. And the final thing is we did enable multi-factor authentication for all of our staff members. So all of our staff are now using multi-factor authentication. Students are not. Students are exempt from that, but faculty and staff are using multi-factor authentication. So that's all I have for my update. Does anybody have any questions?
And I'm just glad to see the multi-factor.
Yeah, it's a big thing. One of the big data points for the multi-factor, I forget the exact percentage, but they said something like 85 to 90% of ransomware type attacks that they estimate can be cut back just by enabling multi-factor authentication. Because a lot of times they come through like some type of an email or phishing scheme, and that's how it starts. So just by doing that, they estimate you can cut back on 85 to 90%. That's not my data. That's some data that I read out there. So just throwing some general numbers out there that I've read. So that would be that'll be a good safety thing for our staff when it comes to the technology.
I know we don't have the technology, but obviously we have the emails. Is that gonna roll out to the staff for an MFA for emails for the board?
It'll be all staff emails, yes.
Including for the board?
Including the board.
Yes, we will do that for the board as well.
Cool. Learn another one.
That's all I have.
Any questions?
I know.
Any
Let's see.
questions?
How many authenticators
It's very simple,
How many
very easy, it's
authenticators
very
are on
easy.
Any
here,
questions
you
for
know?
Mr. Durr or
No.
Mr. Hill? Seeing none, Donna, I will relinquish the chair to you.
I have to make an announcement. We did call an executive session for 7 o'clock. It's 7 o'clock. If no one on the board has a problem, I would like to delay that till after the meeting, instead of walking out now with members of the public here and letting the administration hang. I'd like to do it unless someone objects, and then we'll do it. But
Matt, I'm gonna
Dep-
leave at
depending on how late it
7:30.
goes, Matt.
That's, I have to leave.
I never thought we'd still be here
I
at
mean-
7 o'clock on the first agenda.
I
Right,
know,
I was
but
gonna
I'm
say,
just saying, I have to leave at 7:30.
Looking-
So just letting you know,
Okay,
okay?
I will gladly inform you tomorrow first thing
Okay.
in the morning.
Looking
Fair
at the
enough.
agenda, it looks like we're gonna be here till midnight.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, that's,
So I'll shut up
me
and-
too. And
And I'm not happy about
I
that.
physically can't stay that late.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Go.
So, are we good to open finance?
Oh, yeah, go right ahead.
Thank you.
Fine.
Mrs. Fink, you wanna come up and maybe join the table for your cafeteria update? And I'll ask you now, so I don't forget, when you're done, can you email me your talking points so I can drop them?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'll go as quickly as possible. The first update for food service is just touching base again on the community eligibility provision program that we have decided to pursue for the upcoming school year, which is the program that will allow free meals, universal free meals to all students at all schools. And that is going to be finalized. I'm wrapping up the application process for that, and we'll notify parents no later than the end of this week that we will have free meals for next year.
That's great.
Yeah, we met the eligibility requirements. They had to be over 40%, so as a district, not individual schools, but grouped percentage, we hit 44%, 44%, and we needed 40%, so we are eligible to provide this program, which is great.
What is that 44% of?
So it's all based on direct certification, so it's not based off of what your income and, family dynamic hitting that free, reduced, or full pay status with the applications. This is all based off of direct certified students, so SNAP, TANF, Medicaid, homeless, foster, so that's our percentage district-wide is 44%.
Thank you. So a little bit different than what we used to look at it for,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted
Yeah,
to,
but it's
thank you.
not the
Yeah.
family income threshold.
It's-
Do we
All
have
the
this-
other services.
Yes, yeah.
And there was
Thank
a
you.
little bit
Tells us
more.
a lot about our community.
Yeah. There was a little bit more detailed information on, just crunching the numbers and the justification to pursue this program that Mr. Link had sent out. I don't know specifically when, but in the Friday
I think it was
update
like the
a
last
couple weeks
two
ago.
updates, there was
Yeah.
detailed formulas in it.
Then my second update is our summer food service program. We've successfully, we still are in the middle of it through August 11th, feeding all of our campers. I think there was 5 or 6 camps that we fed over the summer, and we also extended that to the community. We had 2 open sites, high school and Slatington. In the beginning, we could only do congregate meal service, so they had to come and sit on site. Most people were not for that, so, our numbers were quite low. 5 to 10 families would sign up every day. But then once we switched over in the beginning of July, we got word that we can offer it grab-and-go style again like it was previously, and our numbers went up between 30 to 40 families are signing up for that now every day. And again, that ends on August 11th. The next item here is just price increases, considering inflation, increase in cost of food and fuel over the past year. So we are recommending for board approval on Monday to do some increasing in our prices of meals. Not, meals will be free, but if a student opts to purchase a second meal, and also for staff meals. So our adult meal pricing and our meal pricing for both breakfast and lunch at the elementary level, the secondary level, and then adult. So for example, at the elementary level, breakfast going from $1.50, which it currently is, to $1.60, lunch from $2.70 to $2.80. Secondary schools, breakfast going from $2 to $2.10, lunch from $2.95 to $3.10, and then the adult breakfast from $2.23 to $2.40, lunch from $3.80 to $4.10.
And again, for the children, that's only if they want a second
A
helping.
second helping of a meal that they want to purchase.
Okay.
So like an a la carte meal. And then The next item here is the negative student balances. So initially, we had a little over $10,000 worth of negative student meal balances that were accrued previous to COVID. And we had used the $3,154 that we received from Giants Roundup at the Register program to apply to that balance.
Cool.
Plus, we also sent letters out that Ashley Height in the finance department has been, receiving checks from parents to get their balances up to zero. So currently, as it stands after that, those two things, we are at down to $6,385.93, which we will try to bring that to zero over the course of the next 2 years, hopefully even sooner than that. And under this new program, we will not, that's the benefit of it as well, we won't have to accrue any negative balances.
Because it's free.
So it's gonna stay at that and slowly decline as we, get donations and so forth. The supplemental supply chain assistance funds, we had, under the Keep Kids Fed Act of 2020, we received some supply chain assistance funds for the upcoming school year, and our district specifically got $34,736, specifically to be used for fresh or minimally processed foods. So anytime we go to Produce Junction or wherever for our fresh produce, we are logging that and using that money specifically for that, and also milk, because those are the two, no-brainers that we can use these funds for. So we are, logging that information as we go through it. There's no time frame of when you have to use it by. You just have to log and show that you're using it for minimally processed foods. We are going to see an increase in our meal reimbursement rates, again, because of the Keep Kids Fed Act of 2020, and also considering the 7.6% inflation. So after the, we'll have these additional the government will have these additional funds to give us an extra 40 cents per meal for lunches, an additional 15 cents per breakfast meal served in the upcoming school year, and then an additional 10 cents for after-school snack. Now, we really haven't been doing after-school snack, but that will apply in the upcoming school year because now we're gonna have that SHINE program. So the actual rates, the specific rates have not been released yet, but I just spoke with somebody from the Department of Ed, and they're anticipating within the next week or so that we'll have those rates. So those numbers are in addition to whatever the rates for next year that will be rolled out soon. A couple expenses that I had since last time we met, we had Kistler O'Brien do inspections on 3 out of the 4 schools. They didn't do the middle school because it's in the middle of renovation, but $568 for inspections that we, that was an expense there. They do these twice annually, so just FYI on that. We also have our Meals Plus POS software and K-12 Payment Center software, and we pay an annual fee of about $1,500 for, just support for those, just to have those programs at all of our sites, and then any tech support related stuff. And then lastly, we have 3 additional new employees that I'm excited to get onboarded going into the next year. So we had 4 people retire. We found 3 people so far to replace 3 out of the 4. One that will be at Peters, one at middle school, and then another at the high school. So we should be in good shape staffing wise going into next year. So outside of that, I think I hit it all. Any questions?
How many positions are you short? Just one?
Currently we're okay, but when Alice retires in September, at the end of September, then we will have 1 opening. So just one we have opening right now. So we're pretty much fully staffed. We like to have 20. We're at 19 right now, so we're.
I'm glad.
I thought we were gonna be in a different spot right now, but there has been some interest. So.
They heard about who's in charge.
Good things are happening in the food services department.
Yes, that's awesome. Okay.
Nikki, can you just go back 1 second to
Yeah.
the meal balance? What was the negative meal balance originally, and then what
The original I know was over 10, but I can get you the specific. It was for sure 10,000. But I do have the specific of what it is right now after we, make payments is 6385.93. All right, and I'll type this up in the.
You just
Agenda.
email it to me.
Okay.
And we'll drop it in there.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a good rest of the night. So I'm going to cover the next few bullet points here for Mrs. Moltores, who's currently on her family vacation. So up first, we've been exploring to see if we could get better pricing for our student and student athlete accident insurance. And it looks like we may have a better option, which I'm going to present to you now. So our student athlete accident insurance currently is coverage paid by the district for PIAA athletes, and the student insurance is a volunteer insurance for parents to purchase if they choose. So all of our student athletes are covered by our student athlete insurance. Parents can purchase additional insurance just for their children in the classrooms. A new company contacted Mrs. Moltores in June and asked her if their company could provide a quote. So we received quotes from our current provider, and Bollinger, which is the new company. Our current provider is Churchman Insurance Group, and right now we're paying them $25,250 annually. Our new provider, new potential provider, Bollinger, can offer us the same service at $17,880, July 1, and then that would be a 2-year contract, so it would be through July 1 of 2024. Mrs. Moltores then met with our current broker, Chris from Churchman's, to compare the two policies, kind of do a side-by-side. And the coverages are the same for both policies, except for the maximum benefit, which is what Churchman offers. That is a maximum benefit of $1 million, and then the maximum benefit for Bollinger is $25,000. But listen to how they kind of break this out. Anytime an athlete is hurt, our insurance, currently Churchman, would cover the cost of that up to $25,000. Once an athlete claim hits $25,000, anything above that are covered by PIAA. It then defaults to PIAA's insurance. You probably know a little bit more about this, and much more than I do. That has a maximum benefit of $1 million per accident. So our insurance, the first $25,000, anything above $25,000 defaults to PIAA. That covers up to $1 million. That's our current coverage. All providers quote with the initial coverage of $25,000 because they know that PIAA picks up. Churchman, our current provider, quotes at initial coverage of $1 million. However, we would only ever use $25,000 because then it defaults to PIAA. Okay, so Sherry, then being Sherry, went out and kind of surveyed her fellow financial directors in different school districts, and just about all of them are going with Bollinger, and they're happy with the service they provide. They also said that they only carried a $25,000 maximum benefit with Bollinger. So she went back to our rep from Churchman's and wanted to know if he could provide a quote with the maximum benefit of only $25,000 instead of the $1 million. And they said Churchman would not be able to match Bollinger's quote. He just flat out told her we couldn't match it. And then just kept pushing the $1 million package.
It's crazy.
So additionally, this is new, Bollinger also covers if a student, whether they are a student athlete or not, if they get hurt in phys ed class. If they get hurt in physical education class, Bollinger's policy would cover that. Currently, Churchman's policy does not. So administration is recommending that we move to Bollinger, and we will realize a saving of $7,300 per year.
I hope we don't spend a lot of time talking about this one, so.
Yeah. See, we just bought $7,000 worth of grass seed right there.
There we go.
Look at that.
There we go.
We're finding it all
Okay,
over.
so
Put it on.
we'll move forward with that, getting that on the agenda. The next one.
That's a pad for the baseball field. Go ahead.
The next topic has to do with the software that our school nurses use to track student health. The tool is called Healthy Tools. So Healthy Tools is a student health information program used in our health offices throughout the district. The agreement is due to be renewed in the 2022-2023 school year. The prior agreement was a cost of $3,000 for 3 years. It is now $12,165 for 3 years. We knew going in the first time that we signed a contract with them, we were gonna get a super good rate. That contract is now ending. You know, so the savings from the health insurance may offset this.
There goes our grass.
There goes the grass. So, but just to make sure that our school nurses, our certified school nurses were happy with the product and they wanted to continue with it, we went back to them to get their input. And they absolutely want to continue with it, and they said that there's not really another equivalent system out there that does what this product does. But we asked them to go check with their colleagues just to make sure. So they went out and surveyed other school nurses from other local districts. And let's see, they are all using Healthy Tools and plan to continue. We're recommending that we sign a 2-year contract with Healthy, or I'm sorry, we sign a 22-23 contract with Healthy Tools. Scratch that. We're recommending that for 3 years, we sign a contract for $12,165.
Oh, for 3 years?
Yes, it's a 3-year contract.
So it's a little more grassy we can get back. Okay.
So if the committee supports that, we'll move it to the agenda for Monday evening.
And the prior one was 3,000
Yeah.
per year, or
Uh,
3,000 for 3 years.
the first year.
It was 3,000 for 3 years. So it's gone up
Wow.
significantly.
That's a big
Yeah.
savings.
Yes,
Holy smokes,
yep.
that's one way to get you hooked.
Yes. Okay, so we'll move that to the agenda for Monday evening as well. Okay, the next one is just some updates on the state budget. This is more for community members than the board, because you have seen some of this already, so I'll move through here quickly. But if you do have any questions on it, please, or for anything that we're discussing this evening, I should have recognized you earlier, just let us know. Thank you. So basic education funding statewide is at $7.08 billion. 5.66 billion went to all school districts with funding equal to what was received during the 14-15 school year. So the 14-15 school year sets the rate for every year moving forward. 1.42 billion went through the BEF formula for distribution, which equates to a 20% of the entire basic education budget amount. So this equates to, for us in Northern Lehigh, this is what it comes down to, an additional $589,792 into our basic education funding over what we received in the 2021-2022 school year. Special education funding, 1.2 billion for the state. 947 million went to all school districts with funding equal to what was received during the 13-14 school year. So that's the base rate. 289 million went through the special education funding formula for distribution, which equates to a 23% of the entire basic education budget amount. So for us, that means an additional $117,464 in special education funding over our previous year. Additionally to that, and you may have been reading about this in the news, because there's been some local and national media coverage on this, we are receiving additional money for safety and security. Statewide, an additional $200 million was put into the state budget for safety and security. 95 million was earmarked for mental health and safety, kind of passing through the PCCD system, Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. They always managed our other safety and security grants previously. So it's federal money being funneled through the state system. Northern Lehigh's share will be $124,566 for safety and security and the same for mental health. Okay, so really that comes to, yeah, an additional, about an additional $250,000 for safety and security and mental health. Mrs. Culp, you asked early if that safety and security could help pay for our school police officer, which just became part of our general operating budget, and the answer to that is yes. So the money that we had in the budget dedicated for Officer Jones can actually stay in the budget and be used for other things, because we can now use
Great,
this money for that.
that's great.
I was concerned they weren't gonna allow, supplanting.
We
they
are
are.
allowed,
Here's the plan, but he's currently paid under Title IV monies and other grants, so we have never really included him in the district budget, so he would roll over into another grant.
Okay, so it's
Um,
not in
Yeah, as long as so they have tier 1 for safety and security, they have tier 1 for mental health. As long as we meet all the requirements that are already in tier 1, then we can fund what we want to fund.
Okay.
If there are things within tier 1 that are not funded, we're mandated to fund those first.
Is there a thought of another SPO with that grant money?
so, we have talked about recently, is that a possibility? Knowing that we would be right back into the same scenario that we were last year for Officer Jones, that would have to be funded kind of 1 year at a time through grant money, which maybe. And we also talked about, would it need to be a full-time position, could be used to
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
cover, kind of stagger them,
Yeah.
with maybe the third one being more of a part-time type of position.
I'm just thinking we already have something in the budget that we already put in there, assuming that we might not have had a grant. Just as a,
And we still are using Title IV. There's a portion of his salary that's still being paid out of Title IV. We were lucky enough to just stay under the threshold and be able to do that.
So for the coming year, it's
Yeah.
coming out of Title IV?
Some of it, not all of it.
Maybe that's, look at that.
Please also know that some of the other things that we've been working towards are, we have to do another 3-year vulnerability assessment, so that's coming up. We're already kind of feeling out a couple providers for that. The good news with that, though, is it looks like because that's a service, we won't have to go out to bid for that process. And then also, there's a couple infrastructure fixes that we have to put into place, and we're trying to figure out what the cost is with that. That may also have to come out of this most recent grant.
Even if we look part-time, a half-time person. I
Something,
just keep thinking of Peter's just.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Mr. Schneider, is retired faculty.
I think of Peter's often.
I love to hear that.
Every minute of every day.
What kind of infrastructure are you talking?
Because it's a security issue, I'm not gonna say at a public meeting.
Okay,
Sounds good.
okay. I was just curious what you were looking at, that's all.
There's a checklist of tier 1 that we're gonna go through and check off what we already have in place and what we don't, but I think that the tier 1 checklist is somewhat public, so if you kinda just look at that and see what we have and what we don't have, you can kinda,
Okay,
Feel
I
out
just
what
didn't
we
know how
still
much we
need.
were looking at, that was my question.
I think we'll have enough to do multiple things.
Okay,
Yeah.
and thanks, Tom.
And then the kind of same side on the mental health services side, there's some things and some things we would like to expand, some things we would like to offer through this new funding. That's all my updates on the finance agenda for this evening. Again, just keeping in mind that we have to file the guidelines for Act 44 and Act 55 with some additional money, and right now it's only for 1 year. We don't know if we're gonna continue it moving forward.
But I'd really love to see us do something for Peters, whatever that, looks like, or whatever proposal you guys would give to us. I'd like that sooner than later, if we could. Is ready, everybody else agree with that?
I'm looking to do something, yes. I don't know if I want to discuss all those things like he said now.
No,
but
no, it's just
I'm
that-
willing to look at moving forward with getting some additional help, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that's all. That's what I was, okay, so you have your direction to
Thank you.
do that.
Appreciate that. So that concludes our agenda for, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Barheit is here.
Yep, hi, Mrs. Barheit.
Hi, how are you?
We're doing well, thank you.
She would like to be part of the educational, and it's not on there, but she has, like, an
Okay.
issue.
Yep.
I'm gonna piggyback off of something that Gail Husak said earlier. She said, the qualities and standards Northern Lehigh is trying to present to the public, and that's what my concern is. This was.
So I'm sorry, just, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yes, it-
If we could just kind of close out the finance committee meeting
Oh,
and
I
then
thought you did.
transition
Okay.
into
Um,
education.
Anybody have anything else? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We're done.
So, let me open up that committee.
Thank you, sir.
You certainly may. Can you pass that down to Dr. Stoker, please?
I understand. I'll give you a buzz tomorrow. No problem.
Thank you, Mrs. Colt. Thank you, Mr. Durr. Okay.
Turn. Yep. All right, we could open up our education committee meeting and Dr.
We
Stoker,
can
but,
start with Mrs.
well, we'll
Barheit,
start with Mrs. Barhart, of course.
since she's been sitting patiently.
That's okay. This was in the local Times News, right past graduation time. And it was the class of 2022 has the compilation of all the districts and the Technical Institute of the local schools in Carbon County and Northern Lehigh. And when I looked through this, it was a very nice talk. I've read most of them, and it was a very nice article about Northern Lehigh graduates. Did people see this?
Mhm.
I
Okay.
did not, but.
I did not
Okay,
either.
You're pictured in here, Mr. Green? Okay.
No wonder I didn't see it.
Yeah, here you are.
Oh,
Okay, so I'm looking through this, and I'm also the president of the Women's Club, and we give a scholarship to the girls a month. We honor girls during each month of the school year, and then a scholarship is given at the end of the year. So I'm really interested in these girls because they come every month and talk to us, and they're pretty impressive with their records. And one of the girls that the salutatorian Emily Moore was one of our girls of the month, and as a matter of fact, she won our scholarship. So I'm reading through this, and it has the class officers, it has what, where the graduation was, it has who the class officers were, and at the end, and how many students are in the district, or in the senior class. And at the end, it says the National Honor Society students, the seniors that were the National Honor Society students. And I'm looking at this, and there were only 11 kids that were the National Honor Society students. And Emily Moyer's name isn't there. And I'm thinking, well, that's odd. She had a high enough GPA to be the salutatorian. Why isn't she in the Honor Society? And I started looking at the other districts, and we graduated 106 kids, I believe it was, and Palmerton had 107. They had 23 kids that were in National Honor Society, and during the school year, I also saw those children, whose students pictured in the Gazette, not the Gazette, in the Times News. And I'm thinking, why do we only have 11 kids in Honor Society? Now, my kids are out of school. I don't have a reason to be concerned about this for my family. But I have over the years had neighbors and different people say to me how they felt that their kid jumped through hoops to try to get in Honor Society and they weren't selected. And how disappointed and how discouraged their child was. And I'm thinking, well, what is the purpose of Honor Society? So I start looking this up. Oh, and by the way, Northwestern had, they had a few more kids than us. They had like 180 graduates, but they had 64 seniors. Just seniors that were in Honor Society. Not the sophomores and juniors that could have been. 64 kids, and I'm thinking, wow, how can there be such a difference? And then as Mrs. Husak said, what is our image here of our educational process? I'm sorry, but it reflects on everybody. Because what that says as a person just reading this, how could we be that far down? Don't we have smart kids? Aren't we educating them? And so I'm thinking, well, what is the purpose of Honor Society? So I Google it. And it's on the National Honor Society website. The only criteria is that you have a 3.4 grade point average. Now I know from these girls coming to talk to us at Women's Club, they have over 4.0s. And I have several friends that had grandchildren over the years, and they say they're excellent students, they've never had a B in their whole career, and they can't get an honor society. Then I have a mother saying to me, he jumped through hoops 2 years in a row. You have to get recommendations from teachers. You have to have the grade point average, of course. You also have to do service hours. Now, I'm a Girl Scout leader, so I've had 2 different girls over the years, last year, actually 2 years ago, that came and volunteered with my Brownie troop so that they could get these hours. I had to supervise them, I had to sign off, I know they do work. So I go back to this mother that's telling me how frustrated and disappointed her son is, and she said, well, he volunteered at Bible school, he taught Bible school, he volunteers at the food bank every week. He's done that all year, way more than the number of hours they need. They only need 10 hours. He's written the recommendations. His advisors told him he had a great talk about why he wanted to be an honor society, why he felt. She said, my son is an honor student, and he's not going to be recognized as an honor student, and he has a 4.4 grade point average. So we're talking like a good student. She also spoke to someone at her work from Parkland, and they were surprised when they got an invitation to come to the Honor Society induction, that they didn't know their child was even doing this, but it was strictly based on their grade point average. And then after they were there, they received paperwork that said, to maintain being a National Honor Society, you have to do some volunteer hours. Again, 10 hours a year. And so I'm thinking, what a disparity and what a shame for our kids feeling this discouraged. And you can try it from year after year. He tried it 2 years. He's going to be a senior, which is really kind of too late, because if you're looking at college money or anything like that, you're going to be putting your applications in. You really need to have this on as a junior. But, he's so discouraged, he doesn't think he's going to even try out for it again, because he jumped through these hoops 2 years in a row. I think that's such a shame. You're talking about mental health issues for kids. I would think that it's an honor, and it's a distinction, and I would think that that's something well-deserved if you have done the academic work to maintain a 4.4, or in the salutatorian's case, she's got to be over 4.0. And not be in this, and that's just a real shame. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, because as a taxpayer, I'm just reading, like I said, I don't have any child that I'm, really advocating for at this point. But I think all children should be encouraged, not discouraged like this. So that's why I called Dr. Lincoln, or Mr. Lincoln. He said, why don't you come? And so that's really why I'm here.
I had addressed this a number of years ago, and more than once, and I was told things were going to be corrected, and until today, obviously, they aren't. And I think it's an embarrassment to our district, a true embarrassment. And when we went back a couple of years ago, when I first brought it up, I did have a vested interest in my own granddaughter, who did all of the same things and had the same grades and so forth, and did not get in. And then after she received some of the information she did, she was told that her essay was not that well done, which surprised me, because I went back to the person who then proofread it, which was Renee Evans, who said it was an excellent one. So my question is, how are we really evaluating? And I think it has not been looked at, obviously, in 4 years. And I think it's time we need to, because again, that information there is an embarrassment. Why would I come to this district with my child, looking at the rest and saying, well, the quality isn't here, obviously. Why do I want to bring and that's not true of our district. When I look at our teachers and when I look at where our kids are and some of the kids who have graduated and gone on to be doctors, lawyers, and whatever else, that's not true of our district, but that's what you read when you read that in the paper.
I agree with you. I do know there's a process, obviously. There's an application, they have to have the service hours. There's a character issue involved, and obviously the grade point average. And all those are accumulated. The process is given to what I'm going to say is an anonymous board of high school teachers that look over the application and the recommendations, and then they decide. When I was when I was a middle school principal, we had the same exact process. Obviously, it wasn't National Honor Society, it's National Junior Honor Society. The process is exactly the same. And I too was often discouraged by, and I wasn't even allowed to know as the building principal who was on the committee that volunteered to be an evaluator of the students. And I was also discouraged and had to answer to parents who would come into my office screaming and kicking, and I don't have an answer for them as the building principal. I'm not even allowed to know the results as the building principal, and that's how it's set up. But I agree with Gary wholeheartedly. We have excellent students here. I have 2 granddaughters that are good students and volunteer and do a lot of things in the community. And you know, one of them in particular is a much better student, said she's not even going to apply because the process is, to them, not fair or jaded, and I'm not going to waste my time. So I agree with you 100%. So
That's really the perception in the community too, because this isn't, like I said, my daughter was in honor society, and she had to, write an essay or whatever, but other than that, she was a good student. I didn't really know anything else about it, but I think that's a shame that it's so different, and that's not even what National Honor Society is recommending. That's a process that has been done here. But I think to have an honors committee, and actually it also said it on the website there, that if you're a disagreement, if you're a parent or you challenge it, you can do that up to 30 days. There's no challenging even mentioned here at all. But I think, what's the purpose? When I saw the Palmerton kids inducted this year, and there were 23 seniors, but there were about 30 kids in the newspaper article. To me, I'm thinking, wow, they're really celebrating their kids that are working so hard. I don't really see the downside of making this so exclusive that it's a discouragement to so many kids. And your granddaughter probably won't try again either, because that's basically what I've heard over the years from other parents. And what's the downside of having them be celebrated instead of so selective that it's just, who knows about it, It's just not, I don't know. So I think the process is probably not the best.
now, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Stroll, is it juniors and seniors are eligible, or is it sophomores, juniors,
It's
seniors?
sophomore, junior, senior.
Okay, because I know you need some grade point average to even apply, so you need that freshman year. But okay, all right.
So I apologize because I don't know the high school side of honor society anymore. I've been out a short time. So is a requirement of our high school National Honor Society, do you have to be part of the junior National Honor Society through the middle school?
We do
No.
not.
No.
You can.
Because
you
I'll
can
be
enter
honest,
at
I
any
see the
time.
middle school, and every award ceremony that I've been at the middle school, I've seen easily 20 to 30 plus students at the middle school level, which is fantastic. So I apologize my naiveness for the high school. But yeah, I'm curious how and why there's such a disparity between the Junior National Honor Society, which is something really great for those upcoming 8th graders, and it's such a far distance of numbers at the high school level.
So I can respond, Mrs. Barhead. I think we hear what you're saying, and I think we hear what the committee members are saying here as well. I think years ago, they wanted it to be, a group of distinctions. So they kept making the requirements more and more difficult. They wanted to make sure that there was a threshold that was being met and that students were, being challenged to get into honor society. When we first came, we did look at the essay. That was one of the things that we looked at the rubric. We looked at the essays because they were very, very restrictive. There was more students not getting in than there were getting in. So that was something we looked at years ago, but we can certainly do a better job. I think we all agree at this point that it's too restrictive. we're not honoring the students who deserve to be in there. There's more students being kept out than there are students being accepted in. So I think that's something that's slated for us to look at again. Looking at, what are the requirements beyond what the National Honor Society requires, because we do have additional things that we look at. But not lessening our standards, but certainly honoring the people who deserve to be there. So that's something that we're looking at for this year.
So you're saying instead of the pillars of what National Honor Society expect, Northern Lehigh has additional
I think,
requirements? Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't want to say that there are additional requirements, I would just say that they're more restrictive than what National Honor Society expects.
Okay.
So,
So I'm thinking Northwestern and having 64 seniors be in it must not have any of those extra parameters on there. Because when you go from 11 to 64 with only another 60 extra kids in the class, that is very surprising to me. It sure doesn't look good.
Yeah, I think we
so we are not, we won't address other school districts'
Yeah.
Okay.
criteria or
Okay.
process,
Sure.
but I can commit to all of you, the board, Mrs. Barheit, our community, that administration will review our selection criteria. Absolutely. Thank you for your patience. I know you sat through a
It's
lot.
very interesting.
I hope you learned a lot of other
Come
stuff.
back next year and tell us how many made it, so we know if we can
Okay,
continue to talk with
all right, thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Mrs. Barheit. So, administration will review that, and then we'll circle back to the board. Dr. Zucker.
The comprehensive planning finalization, just wanted to bring this back to Education Committee. It will be on the board agenda for next Monday night. We did post for 28 days, actually more than 28 days after the June board meeting. We posted our overall comprehensive plan, and additionally all of the sub-plans that we have to post as well. There's a shot of what they look like on the website. If you recall, we did each of those plans as required by PDE, but we also kind of put our own Northern Lehigh twist on it, made additional documents that would be more user-friendly for our public, for our students, for our parents, for our community members. So they're both posted up there. The PDE versions are what we have to submit to the state, but the other versions are, what we think is a quality document to put out to families in the district. And again, all of that is the work of the Comprehensive Planning Committee that met for months and really did a nice job of having conversations and putting things together. So at this point, we did not receive any additional feedback outside of the conversations that we had at the Comprehensive Planning team meetings, at the Education Committee meetings, at the board level. There was nobody that reached out individually through the website or anything like that to me for any additional comments. So based upon what we have here, we would be looking to submit those documents to the state. The way that it would work is that we have to approve those at the next board meeting next Monday. So there'll be a motion to approve the overall comprehensive plan and all of those sub-plans. If you remember, the special education plan had a little bit of a different timeline, so that's already been approved. And then after they would be approved at the board meeting, Mr. Link would go in and sign off on those kind of on the back end through the Future Ready Comprehensive Planning Portal, and then they would be submitted by the end of this month as required by PDE. If they have any comments or questions, they can always push things back to us after that date for clarification or to update, but that's what we would be looking to do as far as our timeline. So that it's just more of a notification piece that's kind of our timeline and the feedback we received. Any questions on that process?
My compliments on your plan. It's really excellent.
Thank you. I think that the team really came together and did a nice job. We had a very, I want to say, robust team that in those meetings really, I think, had some really quality conversations. So I appreciate all the members of the team that participated. Okay. Next is student handbooks. Typically we bring these to the board and to this committee in June. We had some changes that we wanted to make over the summer, and you'll see those reflected in here. Mr. Hill talked a little bit about the technology insurance. That's a piece of it. We looked at dress code. We upgraded all of our disciplinary codes. There was a lot of work that happened with the administrative team over the summer, and so in August we're bringing those to the board for approval. They would hopefully be moved forward to next Monday. for approval at the board meeting, and then they would go out to families for, the start of the school year. So we'll take you through each of those handbooks and the changes that occurred in those. So I'll start with the elementary handbook, and Mr. Schneiderite's going to take us through those changes.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all. All right, so for the elementary handbook, just to give everybody some general information, there are quite a bit of changes this year. There's a lot of, just typical, changing the year, and I'll move very fast through those because obviously there's nothing really to discuss. You'll also notice that a lot of the changes happened with additions to add more clarity to the handbook. So I think that there's probably nothing, that's going to surprise you necessarily in the changes we go through. The only things that, and you'll see a little bit differently than the past few years, we did leave previous language in there just to show the board that here's what we changed it from, crossed it out, and here's the new language. So if there's anything where you're questioning, what did that say beforehand, it's all there, okay? So just going through the first few pages, for instance, starting in the general information, we have updated the handbook to include our new mission, our new motto as approved by the comp plan, changed some dates on pages 3. Going to pages 6 and 7, based on the comp planning, we also updated the vision statement, the commitment statements, the board members. Going on to page 10, there's our vision and commitments. Again, these are all things that were, already sort of gone through our comp planning. On page 10, and here I am, updated alterations of the school day to include. So this here, is this where I am? Are you on page 10, Dr. Stone? I can't see what page that is.
It's
9.
That's 9.
Thank you. So on page 10,
Unless I have to download it, it's coming up with different page numbers.
oh, goodness. Of course.
Let me do this.
Yeah, I have that as page, I'm sorry, page 12. So this is the first big addition. So we updated our, because typically we have traditional school closings, half days, and delayed openings. This now includes our virtual instruction days with more finite information for parents. This way, as they're preparing for the school year, we obviously communicate this out as it approaches, but now it's proactive within our handbooks. Continuing on, under the section policy highlights, we're on pages now 15 and 16. Quite a few things here. First on page 15 and 16, all buildings updated language for the dressing and grooming sections. It's to be more inclusive and to provide more information to parents. In the policy section, we're looking at, I guess, updating the policy as well. So again, this basically removed some of the gender issues that were there, where it was unfair, for one gender to another, and tried to make it more neutral. As well as just sort of using our common sense as an admin team and making sure that we felt comfortable, with this K through 12.
I would just add too, we also looked at religion and cultural differences and tried to be more inclusive and a sense of belonging with, what garments people may wear for those reasons.
Continuing on page 19 and through 21, in the elementary handbook, we added general care and precautions section to clarify the best ways to prolong the usefulness of our school devices. In this section in the past, it was pretty much don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. We decided to add in there, here's what you could do to sort of prolong the care of your Chromebook. We want it to last a very long time, so we don't have to have Eric use his $75,000 of budget money every year for repairs. And then continue on page 23, we again just further clarified the wellness policy and included the new link to the policy, which was just updated in our comp plan. In the next big section for attendance, and I'm now, Dr. Stoker, on page 29. The next change, we updated our handbook to include information on how to excuse an absence via email through our PE attendance and our SE attendance email addresses. We actually stole this from Mr. Hauser. To do this, you can't just email and say my child is absent. because then all of a sudden you get emails from Joe's mom at gmail.com, and it's Joe. What we do is we just highlighted in there that we need parents to take or parents or guardians to take a photo of the excuse note or a photo of the doctor's note and email it to us just for clarity. So that's something we communicate, but already communicate via email and through our community outreach, but now it's in our handbook. In the next big section for our Schwebb's framework and school discipline, there are quite a few changes here, really additions. It used to say school discipline, and we spent a lot of time last year, we did an entire board presentation, how we use our school-wide positive behavior support program to proactively teach expectations, reward them, etc. And then we titled the whole section discipline. So we thought it would be more advantageous to add the Schwebb's framework to the title, as well as move all of the information and some updated information regarding what that defining those three-tiered system at the beginning of that section to provide a framework, so that when we go into here's what happens when when something is against our policies, what happens, that's stated at the very beginning. So again, on that page 33, we updated the title and then moved the Schwebb section higher up and added some more defined information. On pages 38 through 39, we updated the disciplinary steps to be taken section to provide more information to parents. It's just providing more details to parents about what some of the things we go through and some of the options at both elementary schools regarding disciplinary steps. On page 39 as well, we changed the title to Rules and Expectations from there to Expectations. So rules and regulations is, again, what not to do. Expectations is, here's what we're teaching you to do. So it just, again, fits better into the framework of our school-wide positive behavior. On page 40 and 41, we actually removed these two phone numbers. They were there, and it's important that they were there, but I'm not sure anybody's going to here's the cafeteria rules to look up the cafeteria phone numbers, or the bus rules for the bus phone numbers. We do have those prominent at the beginning of our handbook with all the other communications, so it just made no sense to be there, so we just removed those. And next on page 42, we truncated the outdated section on bus discipline. All principals at all building levels were using a form that was old and had some things in there we didn't actually do. So we've actually made that shorter and connected and created a link to our new updated bus discipline form, so that parents have sort of the updated information regarding bus discipline. On page 43, I would see you go back there. Thank you for clicking on that. I wasn't expecting that.
Oh no. I just lost
Here
the
we go.
download. Hold on.
So I'm on page 43, Dr. Stoker. And these are pretty straightforward. We did add some information on 43 regarding how we handle cell phone usage at the elementary school. We had it in there as a rule, but we didn't add any details about it. We worked together and sort of looked at some of the ways that the middle school and high school framed that conversation and included that. On page 44, a simple change, we updated the smoking section to tobacco products to relate more to the updated board policy, as well as on page 46 and 47, updated the terroristic threats or acts section with the new policy link and reflects the new policy that was updated, I believe, at the end of last school year. The next big section, academic services. At the very beginning there on page 49 and 50, we added some details regarding grades and reporting. We always share this with parents, but we had never put it in the handbook before. We decided that was the best place for it. So we added that on pages 49 and 50, and on page 50 added the student services plan, which is again was a part of the comp planning. Next on page 51, provided more information about academic services we used. We made it very well defined, just like the Schwebb's with the different tiers, and we did that for, again, earlier for school-wide positive behavior, and here we did it for academics, as well as social emotional health. On pages 53 and 54, all handbooks contain updated information regarding special education that was drafted by Mrs. Dada, so that's all consistent in all our handbooks. On page 55, we added contact information for our ESAP section. Previously, the parents could read about that, but they didn't have anywhere to go if oh, I have other questions, so it just highlights if you have any questions, to contact the building principal or the school counselor, which are both staff team members. On page 56, we added a link to the gifted service plan, which again is part of the comp plan. On page 56, we also provided more information from our registrar on registration, withdrawal, and on page 56, we added more specific information regarding retention at the elementary level. We decided to reframe that and add some more information. On the next, and we're almost done, just 3 more sections, but not many more changes. In the student services section on page 59, we updated information from Mrs. Fink related to the free and reduced lunches. At the time, it included information that we may, possibly be continuing free meals for the next school year. That may need to change if she's going to be giving out language this week regarding it's going to happen. So
I think what we decided was, because that may not happen every year, that we're gonna leave, we recommend that we leave the handbook as is, but she will communicate directly with families once we get the approval from the state.
one last thing, fantastic.
Thank you,
So again, we did update the information directly from Mrs. Fink, and that should be all consistent in all the handbooks. On page 60, added information about our monthly family engagement meetings. Obviously, we communicate that directly and very often with all families, and it's on our website, but we thought it would be impertinent to put it under our Title I section for us to just highlight the family engagement. On page 65, we're now going into health services. Right there, I'm not sure. 65. We added information on our naloxone policy about Narcan, and a link on page 65. We also updated language about our health and safety plan and how it is updated. We didn't want it to be confusing to community members if the health and safety plan is updated. But it says this in the handbook, we should be doing this. We'll know that the health and safety plan that is able to be updated by the board or Mr. Link, it will supersede what is in the handbook if something new arises. So we wanted to make sure that was clear. I have no changes in health and safety, and the only other thing that's different in this handbook is the Title I documents, which have been updated with new years. We brought that to our Title I sort of planning committees, and there were no big changes recommended. The only thing that has to change after, if it's decided that you want to move this on for approval, is we'll go back, we'll take out all of the cross-outs and make sure the formatting is great, and update the title page with all the page numbers as well as the index, just to make sure everything works. Does anyone have any questions? I moved quick, but I'm happy to slowly take questions if anyone has
Okay, thank you, Mr.
any.
Schneider.
Great, thanks.
All right, the next one we'll take a look at is the middle school handbook.
I've been on that side.
I think we set them for like a 7:30 shutdown, thinking most people would be in by then.
I think I'm good.
All good?
I think so. All right.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the time tonight. The middle school handbook, we revised in a different way this year, along with looking at it over the summer with the administration team. I started this process back in January with some students who had come to me with items, to change. I won't say that I was accosted by a group of girls wanting to change the dress code procedures, but we'll say it came pretty close to that. But that kind of sparked an idea to get more student input on this. So we started there, and then I did do my coffee meetings, and at 3 consecutive coffee meetings, a lot of the changes in existing language were looked at with groups of parents. So the changes that we have in here are unanimously kind of debated by parents, and now I bring it for your consideration. So first on the cover, we just have the change with the year and the motto. The next changes, table of contents will be adjusted pending approval. Next changes to pages 5 and 6, we added some introductory language. The original introduction had stuff in there as the middle school is like the gateway to high school, but Bridge has 2 sides, so we wanted to reflect that. That's something that I'm passionate about, knowing where kids were, not just where they are going. Mission statement and the vision statement have been added over these pages as well as per the updated comprehensive plan. On page 7, board membership has been updated to reflect the current members of the Board of Ed and also the administrative team. Down to page 8, the 22-23 school district calendar has been added. Pages 9 and 10, we had just a couple minor adjustments to our bell schedule to accommodate some transportation needs. If we go to 10 and 11, very much like the elementaries did, I believe that's their language verbatim, just talking about traditional school closing versus virtual school closing days and the expectation. Also then getting into the use of our community outreach system. Further down that same page, under attendance and absences, we did outline what goes on an actual absence excuse. We did see a rise in absences that were kind of incomplete of information per policy and law. So I did want to codify that a bit, and we also added the parameters for the electronic excuses as well. Heading down to page 12, we've clarified the language surrounding mandated attendance procedures, just adding clarity, noting on the communications that we'll have, and also connecting that to excessive tardies. At the middle school level, we tend to start seeing an uptick in the number of late arrivals to school, so we do track those minutes, and that is all part of monitoring attendance. On page 13, we have some revisions to our response to tardiness. Down a little bit, there we go. It used to be students were allowed one late and then they would start receiving consequences. We went more with a 3 strikes and you're out approach per marking period. We also changed words like will to may be assigned because every situation is unique. We did have some students arriving late this year due to issues that were no fault of their own, and I didn't want to see those students punished, so we put a little bit more discretion into that enforcement. On page 14, we clarified the educational trip, and then we also have added a section here on page 14 about schoolwork that is missed due to absence. This just kind of codifies the procedures that we've had in place for a little bit, adding in the number of days the students were absent plus 1 day to get that work in, and that also applies to periods of OSS. Pages 15, 16, and 17, and 18. These are updates per Dr. Stoker and Mrs. Dada to IDEA, gifted, registration, and the CAF. Page 19, we've updated grading and reporting to explain our summer school guidelines. Also updated our retention protocols. 20 and 21. We've explained our tiered system for school-wide positive behavior support, what we call the middle school, the Bulldogs Inspire program. Dr. Stoker, if you scroll a little bit more, we can see tier 3, and we've also put our behavior matrix directly into the handbook for parents to review. On 22, we get into MTSS. In here, we outline how we use flex period as our primary implementation of MTSS. So this also includes the assessment tool IXL, how that is scheduled and used. It also talks about what the flex grade is on Power School and report cards for parents, so that they can kind of see that. And it talks about teachers using that to target certain kids for individualized attention. Bottom of that page, late work protocols. This was a request from parents. So we came up with some uniform late work protocols. We kind of had teachers doing kind of whatever they want all across the building as far as when kids could do late work. We want to have accountability, but also remember that our students are 12, 13, and 14 years old, and they will mess up. We want them to do their work, so we're putting a uniform procedure in place to allow kids a certain number of days to get work in before a 0 is automatically put into the grade book. Pages 24 and 25, these are updates per the technology department of the acceptable use policy. I believe just updating a few links and removing some language as per Mr. Hill. Page 29 would be our next update. This is under the nursing services section. This is a rule we've always had in place, but it's kind of never been written down, and it just prohibits students from carrying over-the-counter medication on their person, with the exception of medical emergency response items like an inhaler or an EpiPen. But we don't want students carrying over-the-counter medications on their person. Page 30, we've clarified phys ed class Students who, when they need doctor's notes to get exemptions from phys ed class, it used to be a certain number of consecutive days. We've made that also cumulative days as well, just tightening that up. 30 and 31, there was some information about insurance with a link added. 31 also updates the student activities. There were a couple that were just left off the list due to oversight, so those were added. 32 and 33, this is language governing team activities and school dances. It has about how they are scheduled. Then Dr. Stoker, if you go on to the next page, part of our positive behavior support system, we want to use the dances and team activities as our incentive days for positive behavior support. So we have, if any students are to be excluded from that, the reasons why that would happen. Basically, they've had suspensions or truancies, things of that nature, but we're trying to be all inclusive here. The next part is cafeteria information. Our cafeteria guidelines were written as just this series of rules they could be their own handbook. So we tried to condense this a little bit and put it more under positive behavior support. So you see I rephrased a lot of this. Dr. Stoker, if you scroll down to the next page, we'll get into why we have certain things, the safety of students. There are some rules that are, and some guidelines for safety to promote working together. Here are some other things. And it also reminds students to have courtesy and respect for the cafeteria monitors as adults in the building. Sometimes middle school students will push the envelope a bit and think that if it's not a teacher redirected them, they don't have to listen. I want them to see that our CAF monitors are also empowered to enforce our protocols. 35 is something similar to that. I put this as the authority to enforce school rules. This also references paraprofessionals and office staff. 35 also has about bicycles and things being on our property, just clarifying some safety language. Dress and grooming is 35 and 36. Very much like what Mr. Schneiderite had, the guidelines for the dress code are listed therein. Just the same modifications Mr. Schneiderite made. 36 and 37, this is one of the more substantial changes we're making to our protocols. We are not going to be permitting students to carry any personal electronic devices on them, not in pockets, not in book bags. We want them kept in lockers or kept in the office space. These have proven to be a major distraction and also a source of student conflict. So this is in response to a lot of the behavioral data that we have seen last year. So we have guidelines telling students what exactly they need to do for personal devices. As an incentive, we'll let the students pick them up for lunchtime and they can have the device at lunch. Parents gave me a great idea in that at the end of the day, when most parents might need to communicate about things like transportation or after school family matters, during our PM homeroom, students will also be permitted to have their devices at that time. This will also outline disciplinary procedures if a student does not wish to have their personal device in their locker. We're saying we want them out of the learning areas. If a teacher does want to use the device for a learning activity, there's guidelines in there for the teacher. Next page down from that, lavatory passes. All students will be issued a lav pass this year. We have water bottles and beverages, just codifying. We don't want anything breakable. We had a couple of incidents with that over last school year. So just changing that up. 39 is locker usage. And then over pages 40 through 47, you will find some tidying up of language in the Code of Conduct. So this will outline different levels of offenses, what goes into levels of offenses, and also what the administrative response would be from a disciplinary standpoint. Page 48, we've added links to the Northern Lehigh bullying policy and also links to the bullying prevention presentation that we did back in January. Page 50, clarifying some language under weapons violations. And then 50 through 52 relates to school safety. Safety drill parameters are added in there, specifically adding things like a working lockdown, which would be used for a medical episode. We've added more contact information for safe to say something, and then added language regarding our threat assessment team. And that covers the middle school revisions.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. Any questions or comments on the middle school handbook?
I have to show up earlier now. I'm in trouble.
3 minutes or something?
Yep, that's it.
3 minutes to be.
I tried to budget for a cappuccino machine and Mr. Link said no.
Come on.
You got a
Parents or
little
kids?
extra jolt. I was gonna sell it in the parking lot as a fundraiser.
Grab your jolt going through.
Lemonade stand, cappuccino stand.
Right.
All right, our other handbook is the high school handbook. Mr. Stroll?
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Stoker. Cover page, we changed the date. Page 3, we added our mission based on our comprehensive plan. We added the district motto. We also added the Northern Lehigh School District vision, which brought us down to Northern Lehigh High School's goals, to a different page. Next page would be page 7, sorry. Updated me in there. It was to be determined all of last year for some reason. And school board members changed and amended. Page 8, district school central office changes, Mrs. Maltor's title, and onboarding of Mrs. Fink.
Can we go back on just for a second? Something just caught my eye there. For officer nows, can we have that slash? Actually, can we have it first be school safety and security coordinator / school police officer for all the handbooks, please?
Yes.
Not like that. Yeah. Just saw that now. Thank
Good
you.
catch.
Thank you. School safety,
And security officer.
security officer, thank you.
Coordinator.
Coordinator, sorry, / school police officer.
Thank you.
We have a link to our policies there on page 8. Page 9, we have an updated school district calendar for the 2022-2023 school year, which is already all in the high school's Google Calendar for all teachers to see. Updated date on page 10 for LCTI schedule. Updated date again on page 11. And then page 12, I have the same language as Mr. Schneiderite and Mr. Hauser for traditional school closing definition, and also virtual instructional days. Page 14, changed to, well, actually on page, added to the dance eligibility, we added there, sort of along the same lines as PIAA requirements or athlete requirements. If you're late a certain amount of hours by 8 o'clock, you're sort of not eligible for those dances. But if it's a one-time thing, and we're looking at the whole student, obviously that's going to be an administrative decision. Page 14, we amended 14 and 15. We amended the dress code similarly to the middle school, made it more gender neutral, and added took some things out of it that were sort of geared toward females. On page 15, we changed the electronic devices. We took out and cell phone usage. We put electronic device, cell phones and earbuds, added earbud usage. We also saw similar data at the high school where cell phones are out, earbuds are out, huge distraction to the academic setting and in classes. So we didn't really change anything to the policy, because you can see the guidelines for use is the same as use of personal devices is prohibited and should not be seen or heard during class time, and also with teacher discretion as well if they're using it for academic purposes. Page 18, next big amendment. Field trips, we added their language about students who are habitually truant or failing courses. If it's a field trip that's sort of not like a educational related, it's maybe it's a senior class trip or class picnic or something like that. But then again, that's on a case-by-case basis, based on academic interest of the students in mind. Flag salutes, we just changed we changed the gender neutral there for the flag salute. saluting the flag, food and drink consumed in designated areas instead of the cafeteria, because we did have grab-and-go breakfast this past year. Page 21, additional language to make up work, added responsibilities for students who are suspended now that we have, the use of a learning management system or Google Classroom and Canvas this upcoming year. Students are able to receive their assignments based on that platform. Page 21, major sort of amendment to, an updated amendment to the non-discrimination policy, section 504, Title 9, Title 11, America's Disability Act. Got rid of the old one and sort of brought in the new language here. On page 24.
So is the red on that?
The red is
striking out?
correct, yeah.
Okay.
And the
sorry.
yellow is, yep, the yellow
Yellow's
is.
the new. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you, sorry.
Sure. And that'll be throughout.
Okay.
The admission passes, we are going to use the admission passes in high school this year again. We got away from it with COVID, but I also added in there that if a student loses their pass, one replacement per semester will be issued without consequence. Continued need for replacement passes may result in detention. On page 25, we added some criteria for work permits. Work papers is sort of unique to the high school and some middle school students too, or 14. We added that, under the Child Labor Law Act, issuing officer's judgment, application cannot maintain adequate academic achievement in permitted work during school year, could be denied based on their academic and their truancy. Attendance procedures, we added in there the use of electronic excuses that could be submitted through email. That was a huge thing last year that I sort of ran into. I think it was very beneficial to have parents just take a picture of a written excuse and send it in. It's the easiest thing that they could have done. Obviously, they're still written, they're signed as according to our policy, but they're just submitted through, take a picture of it and send it through email.
Can you scroll down just a little bit to the working papers? I just have a quick question. Why do we require a parent to come into the guidance office to sign the papers? I know other school districts do not do that. There are parents who work, 3 to 11 or night shift, and they're not able to get in there to do that. So what is a student supposed to do if a parent can't come in? You have a lot of single parent families, you can't get off work. What is the purpose of that?
So we did try to do that with some parents that were not coming to the school, and I was told that was a state requirement.
No, it's not.
And so that's something that we could look into, and we can change that.
Yeah, I know it's not, because other school districts don't, they allow it. I mean, I know that for a fact. So I was just curious about that.
Let's verify that though. Other school districts may be doing it. I just want to make sure that we're doing it legally.
And I don't know the
Yeah.
answer to
I
that
don't know if they
either.
are or not,
Yeah.
so let's just verify it.
I mean, Northampton, for one, I know.
Well, it sounds like they can do it in front of a notary,
Page 25.
so is it,
But
Did-
a notary is they're licensed by the state.
yeah,
But it
so
says,
I'm
or in
saying,
presence of a notary, that might be our policy, is what I'm saying.
so I would think that they could either come into the guidance, the way I'm reading that, they could
Right.
either come into the guidance office, and if they can't, then it has to be notarized by a legal notary.
My question is, then why are other districts doing it differently?
Got it.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying if that's the law, great, then the other districts are not following it. But I know for a fact they're not. Believe me.
I'm just thinking maybe it's a safeguard that students might bring in forged paperwork and parents might not. I guess
Not disagreeing with it, I'm
Right,
just
right.
saying it just makes it difficult, that's all I'm saying.
We'll take
So
a
let's
look
find
at-
out.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that before
I appreciate
Monday.
it.
For the attendance section and the email portion of it, to be consistent with the other two handbooks, is there something about putting the picture into that one as well, or am I not reading it? Required to be.
Electronic excuse can be sent to high school attendance at nlsd.org. So the procedure of just taking a picture of a note, is that what you'd like to add
Yeah,
there?
the other two kind of detailed it a little bit in, make sure you take a picture of it and send it that way.
Yep.
Just trying to keep it consistent across the three.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. Page 20, page 30. Again, we added the positive behavior intervention support program at the high school, school-wide positive behavior and multi-tiered support system, along with our essential skills that are based on that are the pillars of our school-wide positive behavior plan. Just like James said, if this section did have coming out with just discipline criteria right away, and obviously want to be proactive with that. Next page is multi-tiered support system definition. Page 32. We changed the criteria for skip detentions. I'm sorry, lunch detention right there. Sorry about that. What page is that, Dr. Stoker? I'm sorry.
32.
Yeah, we added teacher and/or school counselors may schedule lunch detentions if they deem appropriate for level 1 infractions. And then for administrative detentions down below, if they are, we had a big problem with students skipping and not showing up to administrative detentions, and so we took out some of the criteria of what some of the infractions are, and we limited it down to if students are assigned skip 2 detentions, then they're assigned a 1-day in-school suspension. We added the word written on page 34 and also updated some of the our progressive discipline procedures, just like the middle school did. Actually, Mr. Hauser and I sat down to change some of these amendments based on the data that we were seeing in our schools and how we could, address some of those issues for levels 1 through 3. Page 37, I'm sorry, page 37, we add bullying presentation that we presented at, and that link isn't working there, but I have it in my document here. Page 43, we added some language for the registration and withdrawal procedure updates.
The
Gifted plan as well on page 42. We added a link to that. Registration withdrawal there on page 43. And then updated advisors. Some of these are still out of date. We had some advisors coming on, some coaches leaving, so that still has to be amended. That still will be amended in sort of a working document on these couple pages here. But we do have a freshman class advisor, Mr. Sender did resign, but Mrs. Schonk came on board and had our first student council meeting today, which is very positive. Page 53, we had updates to our free and reduced meal information, just like Mrs. Fink presented earlier. And the rest of the principles here as far as the when to grab breakfast and the prices of the meals. On page 61, we updated our threat assessment team procedures. We are working with a new, we worked with a new, page 61.
Yep.
We worked with a new threat assessment software program last year, Navigate 360, and we updated that in our student handbook. And then on page 63, we added wellness and fitness to under our nurse section. Any questions with the high school handbook?
Thank you,
Just
Mr.
a general
Strong.
question. All the clubs and the sports that were all listed, there were names listed in the handbook.
Those are advisors, not student names.
No, I know. What if that advisor would change? Like, so curious, like the baseball coach right now, we don't have a baseball coach.
Right.
Should they be there or not, or be consistent? I don't know, I'm just asking a question. Does it matter?
I think they're there so that students can go and seek those individuals out. But yeah, they are still changing. For example, field hockey and baseball are not up to date yet. We don't have those are still vacant.
So then I guess when does the notification go out if you make a change throughout the year? I'm just thinking of that one thing, and then if you go and change something, just,
I don't know that we typically we don't send out a mass notification.
That's what I
when we
mean.
hire a coach. I think that's just more of,
We just
we just kind of,
update it.
we just let the kids know, and then we'll update it again the following year in the handbook. I think it is nice to have it in there at the start, even though we do know that they change from time to time. For the same reason that Mr. Stroll just said, for the same reason that parents at least know where to start.
Sure.
Personally, I would like to see it in there, but I understand that there's.
I'm just a general question, just
Yeah,
because
there's
sometimes
turnover.
they're,
Yeah, other than a
Yeah,
school
well-
board meeting announcement,
you don't know.
it doesn't go out to parents, right?
He was TBD all last year, so.
Oh.
When the assistant principal was hired, they didn't change it.
Good point. All right. Okay.
Okay. Mr. Hill, do you want to talk about the insurance for technology on this committee?
Yeah, just wanted to add that if you notice, there was still insurance information. We left it in the handbooks because we weren't sure which way the conversation was going to go today. So we will be removing the insurance part of the handbook from all the handbooks, the insurance section, just in case anybody noticed that will be taken out.
And I just want to commend the administrative team. We do a summer work day, and we probably spent at least a full day, if not a day and a half, working on the handbooks to try to make them as consistent as possible. Great discussion about changing the discipline codes, looking at dress code and making it more equitable, going through and trying to have a positive spin on discipline and make it more fitting with a positive behavior support system. So I just want to commend all of the administrators that worked as part of that day or day and a half really to upgrade the handbook. So at this point, we would be looking for the board to approve moving the handbooks to be approved at Monday night's board meeting with the changes that were discussed, and then there would be the finalized version. So you won't see the mocked up or marked up version. It would be the final handbooks that would be there on Monday night. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the admin for the hard work on those. Next up is Mr. Pine, talking about our keynote speaker for our opening and service days and beyond.
Sure. So hopefully, I mean, for the board members, Ken Erman should be a name that rings at least a little bit familiar. I've dropped him into the board update a couple of times. I've been having conversations with him since I saw him speak at the PD Data Summit in March, and he did a really great presentation emphasizing the ways that teachers can identify and find data in order to meet the needs of individual students and groups of students in the classroom through differentiation. I found his presentation very impressive, but even more impressive the way that he responded to challenging questions at the end of the presentation, and his familiarity with this as a technique, as a really good strategy for reaching the needs of all students. So I had a conversation with him afterwards, and this sort of ended up evolving as we were looking at what the building needs were, which was a lot in terms of how do we meet these different needs of students, into bringing him on as our keynote speaker as well. And he's done keynote speeches before for schools and districts. And really the focus of that's going to be on demystifying this sort of process of using data in order to guide instruction in the classroom, with a real emphasis on the empowerment of teachers as professionals, that they are the empowered professionals in that classroom who are able to make the most difference in children's learning, and that the information and data that they have and a good technique, a good strategy can accomplish that. This really seemed like a year where teachers, we believed as an administration, teachers need to hear from a teacher. They need to hear from a teacher who does this and who can motivate them to do this. That then further expanded now into introducing Ken to Mr. Briner, who is going to also be contracting with him as a spinoff from that in order to do professional development throughout the course of the year at Slatington Elementary on differentiation, and particularly with a focus on data use. And that's going to include a couple of structured PD sessions as well as a couple of embedded coaching days, working with the teachers in the classroom and actually implementing this model. And so our hope from there is that, who knows, maybe we develop enough capacity just from this that we branch out into other areas where this is needed. Or maybe we also consider extending out our relationship with Ken further if we end up really seeing what we're looking to see on the other end of this. So when you see that name on the board agenda for approval for a contract, that is Ken Ehrman. Any questions about that? Okay. I will keep you updated. So the next thing I have on the agenda here is just an update on Canvas. I always kind of feel like I'm trying to fit 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack when I run through some of these things. So if I run too fast, slow me down, or feel free to obviously ask questions afterwards. But we've been doing a lot of work over the summer and even at the end of last year on Canvas that, again, I think I've sprinkled some things in updates, but just so you have sort of a cohesive idea of how this is all coming together. The first thing I should mention is at the end of last year, Ms. Stubitz and Mrs. Dunham put together what really is going to be our Canvas PD asynchronous platform. I really like the look of it. I'll have to put together some screenshots and things like that and share that out and figure out how to get you all to see the visuals on that. But it started with buttons and placement for Canvas PD, for new teacher orientation. Ultimately, we're looking to evolve out a full curriculum for our new teachers and their induction as they're coming in. For other technology tools, and then ultimately we framed out using the Danielson framework as an organizing structure where we'll start warehousing other asynchronous PD that we create. And so we're really working aggressively to try and populate that as much as possible by the end of the year, but that'll be a continuously growing resource. And so the first thing that did go in there and went out to the teachers was an asynchronous introduction to Canvas. It's actually designed by Canvas, so this was really curated. It wasn't designed by us. The first day ready sort of module set, which we already do have some teachers who are using. We also have coming up in another week, or not even a full week from now, by Ms. Dunham, a Canvas Foundational Professional Development that she's going to be doing over 2 days, August 8th and 9th with our teachers, which for those teachers who are really looking to get to understand this prior to that first set of sessions at the end of August, they'll be able to come out and get a head start on that. We also, as an administrative team, did receive training from Mrs. Dunham, and I helped a little bit, but it was mostly her, in order to begin populating our own professional development modules in there. Again, the idea here being that if we're going to ask teachers to do it, we want to do it. We want to make sure that we're providing differentiated PD from our administrative team as we're asking them to begin designing this for students as well. So on the back end, in training our trainers, Ms. Dunham is also participating in a 100-hour professional development through Canvas to make her a Canvas certified educator, which will be valuable to us as a district as we continue to look to personalize our approach to Canvas and how we're doing that. And that started this summer, but that will continue throughout the first half of next year as well. So as we move into the fall, particularly at the high school to start, and then when we move into phase 2 with Slatington Elementary in the middle school in the second half of the year, we're dedicating approximately 2 hours per professional development day to increasing capacity and knowledge among the staff in terms of Canvas. 6 hours at the high school at the beginning of the year in order to make sure that they can get off on a foot. We've set benchmarks for what is going to happen throughout the course of the year in relation to each of those professional development sessions. So the overall timeline, I'll just try and be as quick as I can. So Canvas has a launch and apply phase. We add an integration stage at the beginning, which is really going to be focused on some communication tools, and I guess in the public relations piece later on, I'll talk a little bit more about that, but some communication tools as well as integration of all of our work in Google, all the work that we've already done, our teachers have already done in Google, and integrating those two together. And there's an ask at the end of all this related to that. The next phase, which is the Canvas phase, is the launch phase, and that really is about beginning with graded activities, leveraging Canvas assignment options, which we're going to really get to a cool place, I think, within the next 2 years in terms of what this can do in order to serve a variety of assignment and differentiation. And graded assignments, which that'll be a lift of some work for teachers, because obviously that's part of this too, is that we want to lift some work while we're also trying to create a more dynamic system. So the apply phase then will focus on course design. So then we're going to really dig in towards the end of next year at the high school with design elements and how to design courses so that they really do engage students, so that they are highly engaging and so that they do meet, they enhance learning. Advanced features in Canvas, and again, that's where we'll probably start differentiating and figuring out what different learning groups and what different teaching groups will need. You know, by the end of next year, we will be talking about mastery pathways and seriously differentiating learning for students to the point where different students in a class could be accessing different content based on how they perform on certain quizzes and things like that, which we're already in conversations with Mr. Schneiderite about how that might serve the standards-based reporting initiative at Peters Elementary, and we'll get on that throughout the course of this month as well. So that timeline will be the entire year for the high school next year. And halfway through the year, Slatington Elementary and the middle school will pick up on that timeline, and that will follow through into the beginning of the 23-24 school year. So we'll shift on through. So the ask here is that one of the integration pieces is moving all of our assessments over into Canvas from Google Classroom, from Google Forms. Our teachers have really put a lot of work into that over the past couple of years. And so Mrs. Dunham found a program and actually even worked through beta testing with the originator of the program for $700, a one-time cost that we're looking to absorb through ESSER funding. For a one-time cost, we'll be able to have all of our teachers next year take those Google Forms and with a couple of clicks translate those over directly into Canvas. So that'll save a lot of work for our teachers as we're moving all of this content over. So that's kind of an update on where we are in Canvas and you know, what we've been doing over the summer. I think that there's going to be a lot to talk about next year, and like I said, I mean, some of that will come up in public relations as well. Any other questions?
So what have you been doing all summer? Excellent. I mean, we're definitely on a right pathway, without a doubt.
I'm glad to hear you
But
say that.
as we get into, and this is something that I talked about before, as we get into using Canvas in the classroom and you see more of those flipping the classroom or blended moments, it would be nice for the teacher to come and share that with the board. I mean, I know it's taking time out of their night, but it would be nice for us to see our investment and really see what teachers are doing to impact kids' learning. To me, that's the most exciting part.
Sure, absolutely, and I'll see what I can do about making those opportunities come to be. And I think that with the
As we go
combination,
through, it's gonna take a while.
The combination of the differentiated instruction approach, I think that we're going to see some really cool
Because,
things.
I mean, I know personally what I'm going to be seeing, but I know like other board members may not.
Sure.
And it would be good for them to see what this is really all about
Sure.
in practice. Thank you, excellent.
Showcase.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely, that sounds great. Yeah.
Okay, appreciate your work.
That's good.
Alright, next one is our 22-23 district assessment calendar. So this just essentially lists all of the assessments that we give at the state level and also some of our local assessments that we give, whether they be academic. We've also included some of our social, emotional, mental health pieces as well as like the PASS. We have some of our culture and climate assessments like PA School Climate Survey. So all of that information is in here. This document will actually be linked to the NLSD.org webpage and will be updated in real time. So as we have to take these windows that we have for certain assessments and make those into specific testing dates, as we report those to the state and make those decisions, then we'll put those new dates up here. We just didn't want to do it up front because you never know with snow days and all of that. You know, hopefully we don't have any of those and we don't really have to with some of the options we have, but this will be updated in real time. But this is reflective of all the assessments that we're giving that we will give for this year. You know, again, drawing in for some of the other pieces, trying to put those puzzle pieces together that we've been developing, looking at Ken Ehrman and what he's going to be helping us do, looking at data. You know, we have Ed Insight now where we'll be putting our curriculum and data into that and being able to use that as a tool to look at that assessment data. Our admin team is looking at creating protocols, walkthrough tools to pull again additional data. You know, common assessments, we're trying to work towards those. So we're trying to at least develop the assessment calendar and keep that up to date so that we can, you know, begin to look at data at more in depth across the district. Okay. Any questions on anything for the education?
Question, particularly on that, it says district calendar, and the assessment calendar is great. And what's the purpose of the district calendar? I go on that all the time, and there's nothing ever listed.
Do you mean the one that we update with events that are happening, or do you mean?
Well, I don't know if we update it with events because there's nothing on the calendar. What I'm saying is I pull up the district.
You're talking
Calendar.
You're talking
about
on the website.
the Outlook district Google Calendar,
Well, yes.
not the ones that's in the handbook.
No, the
Yeah.
district, the Google, yes.
So
I'm
the
trying
only
to
thing
find
that-
out what's happening and so forth. There's nothing there.
So at this point in the summer, we will be getting information from each of the buildings, and that gets put in one massive kind of upload at the beginning of the school year. And then throughout the years, the secretaries in the offices typically give updates through a Google form of new events that are happening. During the pandemic, things kind of got,
Okay,
lost a bit, but for this year, it should be back up and running in full effect.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Because there are times that I don't really wanna go through 3 buildings to look at what's happening, to find out what's happening.
Right, sure.
And I go to the Google Calendar because I think it would be there, and it's not.
Yeah, it should be for 22-23.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions, feedback, anything else for Education Committee?
Thank you, Tanya.
Mhm.
And great work on the comprehensive planning plan. A lot of work there, and a lot of people to control in some cases, myself included. All right, that concludes the Education Committee meeting, and I guess we'll move on to policy.
And that's for Mrs. Susak.
Sounds good. Policy committee open, and I'll pass it to Dr. Shepherd.
All right, thank you. First policy is 008, Administrative Organization. I will click on this, but we don't really have any changes that we're recommending. This is really just for review. It is posted on the website. Rather than looking to update the policy is just kind of a blanket policy saying that we're going to create an organizational chart. The important thing that we're looking to change here is the organizational chart. As you know, we've reorganized the business office. So we went from 2 administrative positions with co-directors to having 1 director with several positions underneath that director. So on this chart, you'll see Director of Business Affairs and Human Resources. On the far left, under that, we have Bookkeeper 2, 1, and then the HR Generalist. So those are the 3 positions that exist underneath the Director of Business Affairs. So we updated that. Over on the far right, where we had SPO and our Safety and Security Coordinator, underneath that we put NLSD SPOs. We went from like part-time SPO to full-time SPO. We just really changed that to reflect that, if we continue to grow that department, we have 1 administrator in that department and the SPOs that would be underneath. We tried to, again, make this so that we had, top down, we have kind of all the cabinet members across, we have all of the building level administrators across, in Mr. Hill's department as well. In the technology department, there's been some delineation within that department as well. So we have the technology system coordinator and computer technicians, which were new positions that were separated out as well. So those are some of the updates that we have within that organizational chart. This is now reflective of how those positions and how those departments have changed. This is an AR, so it's an administrative regulation. It does not necessarily need board approval. If you have any feedback through this committee or anything that needs to be updated that we may have missed, we can certainly update that, but this does not need to go to the board level for approval. There's nothing that's changing as far as the policy. Any questions or comments on that?
I just have one quick question.
Mm-hmm.
For the high school and middle school where it says the secondary assistant principal,
Mm-hmm.
do the professional and support staff report to the assistant principal? And then the assistant principal report to the staff, or how do you read that?
It's kind of a flow through. So it's the high school and middle school principal and assistant secondary principal that kind of all supervise that middle school professional and support staff and the high school professional and support staff. So all 3 of those administrators.
So then who's the secondary assistant principal's direct?
Supervisor?
Yeah.
The principals.
Both of them?
They do, yep. It rotates typically back and forth who evaluates the assistant secondary principal. Sometimes it's the middle school, sometimes it's the high school. And then I supervise the principals and ultimately the assistant principal as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments on that?
Good, sure.
Looks good.
All right.
That was the only one I couldn't figure out.
The next one is policy 202.1, foreign exchange students. I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Link for discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Stoker. So here, we're really just looking for direction to see if the committee wants us to move forward in updating this policy. And the reason why we're asking, let's say probably anywhere from 1 to 2 times a year, we'll get a request, usually in the summer, to host a foreign exchange student. Currently, our policy says that we must receive those requests. The organization shall submit their request by July 1st. So it's a shall, which means that we must follow it. And there's a hard date in there of July 1st. Sometimes they'll come in a week or 2 later and we're like, we can't violate our own policy. We're not allowed to violate policy, so we cannot. Even if they're asking for a spring semester for the student to be hosted here. So we're looking as an administrative team as if this policy committee would like us to kind of start drafting something where they still have, say, a July 1st deadline for the fall semester, but then maybe a late November deadline, early December deadline for the spring semester. So they have they kind of have a second chance for us to host a foreign exchange student. So if the committee would like us to draft something up like that, we will do it. Right now, the policy reads shall, so we can't do it, but if you want us to consider it, we'll come up with some draft language.
I think that's a good idea to say that if you're gonna be in the spring, that you have an opportunity then. I don't know how many groups do, I know like from Rotary, and again, looking at particularly from Rotary, and also I did host someone from another group. I mean, we have to know that even as an organization long before, and because there's so much paperwork and it has to be done on both levels, the school district. So, but I do think that if someone is looking at a second semester, they may not have that paperwork before July 1. That is a possibility, and to give them an opportunity for a spring.
Sure.
But I still think you need to hold strong with your July 1 personally. That's my personal feeling.
For the fall semester.
Agreed.
I think looking at it and opening it up for that second chance is a fair start.
All right, so we'll, next month, we'll bring back something to consider for first reading.
That's great.
Okay.
Will that include an email we received about a month ago?
Yes, I think it's just all that one.
Okay, good. Thank you.
If we can get it passed in time, they could apply for spring.
Okay.
If they want
But
to
they,
spring.
as of now, because unless the board wants to violate its own policy, the answer is still no for now,
Yeah.
for fall.
Understand.
So,
Okay.
okay.
If we change it next month, though, we should be okay, because we'll
Yeah.
have September,
Yeah.
October, and it'll be passed in time.
Okay.
So administration.
Okay?
Yep, thank you.
All right, policy 221, dress and grooming. So this evening you saw a lot of discussion about the dress code as far as it was in the handbooks and some of the information that we really kind of drilled down a little bit further. We also made some changes in the policy that encompass what we did in the handbooks. The handbooks are obviously more specific because we went into greater detail and we went with respect to the different levels of education and age of our students. This just really incorporates those changes, but does it at more of a, a higher level. So we had previously all footwear, including sneakers, will be tied. A lot of sneakers don't even have shoelaces these days. So what we kind of did is had a discussion and went back to the point where we just said, whatever footwear you're wearing needs to be safely secured to your feet. So we don't want, shoes to come off as kids are walking down the hallways, but we understand that, shoes look different than they did probably when this policy was drafted last. Number 2 said students will not wear any type of outdoor clothing while in the building. This includes hats, caps, hoods, certain scarves, and other headwear. We are running into some circumstances where students will put, their hoods up and they have AirPods or things in their ears, or they're trying to hide things, whatever is going on inside their hood. But we do recognize that we have religious reasons for people wearing headwear, including scarves. We do have some cultural reasons that people may wear, things upon their head, so that we are saying, except for those religious or cultural reasons, those other, we're not expecting students to wear hats and hoods and things like that. Lower down, number 3, no form of clothing or accessories which are suggestive or promote alcohol, drugs, tobacco. So we took out the suggestive piece and left it very specific as to promoting alcohol, drugs, tobacco use, weapons or violence, or have double meanings which are suggestive, obscene, or promote hate speech shall not be worn to school. So just adding in some of those other things that we've come across, in some of the things that students have been wearing lately.
Should the headgear include medical on there? I mean, there are children who do have cancer and do wear hats or whatever else because they don't want to. Should it just say medical in there? I don't know, I'm just asking.
I would be comfortable with a medical exemption.
Yeah.
I know oftentimes children have to wear the neuro sensors, if they're epileptic and baseline data. I'm comfortable with a medical exemption.
So are we okay then changing this to accept those for religious, cultural, or medical reasons?
I would think so, yes.
Okay.
Principles as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good point, Gary.
And then if we can just reflect that in the handbook to match this language, then once we change that. Okay. That's it as far as this policy. Again, it's very high level. What we have in the handbooks is definitely more specific. Okay. Anything else for policy committee?
Does the
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, does the committee support
Yes.
that policy going for first reading? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
With the change.
With the change. Anything else for policy committee this evening? We do have, just on a side note, the policy calendar, which we'll share out moving forward into this new school year. We're pretty much caught up on all the policies that we have through PSBA. They release them pretty much quarterly, and then, obviously there's never an end in sight. You always have to keep catching up with whatever's being passed, but we're in a really good place right now with policies. The ARs are a different story. We do need to catch up with some of the ARs for some of the policies that were redone lately. So that'll be our next goal, is to really catch up with the ARs. But the policies themselves, we're in a good spot unless we make some decisions to redo them, or some laws are passed that have to be major updates. Okay. Mrs. Husak?
Anybody else from the board? No? I will close policy meeting.
Gary, I think you're the ranking person.
Committee of one, I suspend, no, Mr. Pine, I'll put you.
Sure. So this will be much quicker than the other presentation on Canvas, and it's actually just kind of a preliminary share. So I mean, in addition to all that we're looking to do in terms of curriculum and instruction and design in Canvas, I mean, we really do think that it's going to become a sort of a hub of communication and information for the district. Right now, obviously, we're looking at things like internal announcements, community announcements that are in that closed loop with students and families, between teachers and students and families, tracking and sharing of information about grades and assignment completion. But even beyond that, we're starting conversations about setting up district and school landing pages that look very much like a website, but that would contain a lot of our closed loop information in them, possibly even resulting in us cleaning up some of the things that we currently have on our public website that don't necessarily need to be there, but are there because it's convenient and it's easy. Being able to put those somewhere else, just for the dissemination, the collection, the organization of information. And then, there are some other neat features that we're going to look to explore, at least internally, with staff and faculty, with discussion boards and the ability to sort of increase kind of some of that collaboration and that working together, not only through curricular issues, but just through community community issues, working through how to solve problems as a community together. So more on that to come, but it's really exciting. And I mean, Mr. Geist in our admin meeting, as we were talking about it, immediately jumped on it and was starting to say, well, what about this and what about this? I think there's going to be a lot of what about this conversations over the next year, and some pretty cool things to come out of that. That's all.
Thank you, yeah, absolutely. So the next agenda item on here is actually on Monday night. You're gonna see on the board agenda, an agenda item for consideration for approval of a STEP team. And the reason why we're bringing, so that would be for a first year club. And then if they are able to establish that they would have enough membership moving forward, it would come back again for a long-term approval. The reason why we're bringing this here is because we thought this one was pretty neat, in that our students came forward and requested that we start a STEP team. So I'm gonna have Mr. Stroll maybe just kind of give a little bit more insight about how that came up, and for the advisor that would like to oversee it.
So we had a number of students reach out to sort of, well, I guess within their classrooms and around the hallways, reach out to Sky March, one of our paraprofessionals in the high school, and they were looking to sort of expand a club where, sort of a dancing club. Now I'll explain what the STEP team actually does and what it is and process. So Sky March took it upon herself to gather preliminary data. In fact, from March till June, she put in about 80+ hours after school, Tuesdays and Thursdays, to meet and I guess create or choreograph certain dances. And so she's looking to, she had in the first year 14 students, she's looking to expand upon that. And she described her successes in the first year as, first year success, students use problem solving skills to overcome individual and group hurdles. Each individual put their own input, ideas, and creativity. Students initiated a fundraiser. Students met on their own time to practice outside of meetings. Individuals came together as one. Future plans were discussed with the group. Parts of the routine had been learned as well. We learned the importance of correct communication as well as listening skills. She this year wants to continue to grow as a group and into larger numbers, hold various fundraisers throughout the year, host an annual stomp show at the high school, compete on a competition level as well as perform at local stomp shows, take a trip to watch professional performers, reach out to colleagues, level steppers, to meet with the high schoolers for tips and pointers. And some of these students who were sort of not involved in an after-school activity had some behavior issues that they were dealing with. And you know, I saw a lot of those curbed after she brought them on board into this group or club, and she was working under the umbrella of the library club with Mrs. Tiedemann, Mrs. Blocker, but now she wants to branch off and make it an official club for the upcoming school year. And I have a Bulldog Steppers presentation that she was able to create for us. So
I can put that into notes then as well.
perfect. I did forward it to you and Dr. Stoker, the application, and but I'll do it again.
Thank you. So, you know, some positive for our students where the unique one about this is that they're the ones that can kind of like, hey, we want this. So we'll share that with the committee.
Yeah, I mean, it does have a historical significance and educational significance to learn about African American history and culture. Students learn about step dancing and why it came about and the importance of it, and the progressive steps that made it in all cultures throughout the world. So kudos to her. She asked to do this. She went through the process and she's gaining traction.
Absolutely. All right, well then it'll be on the Monday evening's agenda. That's it for community relations. Yo.
Okay, well, I rolled that fast.
Yeah.
Okay, we got 4 bed brothers and Link, if you could just adjourn to the.
Yep, we can head back to the conference room. Thank you.
Thank you, administration.
Thank you, everyone.
5-minute break for potty.
Yeah.
Bathroom break. Dinner.